6:31 on March 27th, 2026, and this meeting of the Montpelier City Council is called to order. Before we go any further, just like to recognize folks who are on Zoom only. Councillor Doyle, will you say hello and check in with us?
Hey everybody, Ben Doyle, District 1.
All right, hi Ben. And Councillor Sheridan, will you check in with us and say hello?
Hello.
Terrific, thank you. In the room with us, we've got Councillors Cohn, Gill, and Alfano. Councillor Brown will be back momentarily. Of course, we have City Manager Curry and Clerk John Odom with us as well. I'm going to read my cheesy poem. Oh, Councillor Cohn?
I just want to mention that I don't have a Wi-Fi connection. I don't know why. So that's why I'm not on Zoom, but I am here, obviously. Okay, thank you. I also don't have a Wi-Fi connection yet. You do? Oh, that's nice. I'm going to go through the meeting logistics before I read my corny poem. To help us have a welcoming, respectful, and productive meeting, let's begin with a few shared norms. We want to understand who is participating in the discussion, so please display your first and last name if you're joining remotely, and whenever you speak, whether in the room or on Zoom, please begin by stating your name and where you live. We want everyone to have the opportunity to speak, so please keep your comments to the allotted time when that's relevant, and focus your remarks on the agenda item under discussion. Obviously, during general business and appearances, anyone can say anything they like. We do want to have respectful and constructive dialogue. So please, if you're able, focus your comments on policies, decisions, and ideas rather than individuals, and keep thoughts about someone's character and intent either to yourself or to some other forum. We want an organized and accessible meeting. So speakers need to be recognized by the mayor before speaking. That's me. And if you have several questions, please ask them together. And finally, we want the council to be able to complete the public's business in an orderly way. So the rules of procedure that are in the agenda packet will guide the meeting and may be applied as needed to keep the meeting moving and to ensure everyone has a fair opportunity to participate. I want to thank everybody for participating in the democratic process and for helping us create a meeting where everyone can be heard and where the community's business can be conducted respectfully and effectively. Now, before we get down to business, I'd like to invite everyone to take a moment to fully come into this place, leave the outside world behind. If you'd like to join me, I'm going to put my feet flat on the ground. I'm going to take a few deep breaths in and out, and then I'm going to read a little something. Among the other items on the agenda tonight, we're going to honor the natural world that sustains us with a resolution about North Branch Nature Center, and talk about the full humanity of everyone in this community with a resolution about Pride Month. Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. And now we'll move on to agenda item 3, to approve the agenda. At this time, any councillor may pull any item. We're going to approve the agenda by unanimous consent if there are no objections.
I don't see any objections, so by unanimous consent, the agenda is approved as presented. Item number 4, general business and appearances. At this time, any member of the public may come and speak for 5 minutes on any topic that they choose. We'll start as we normally do with folks here in the room. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak? Ms. Jarvis.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. I'm Sarah Jarvis. I live on Terrace Street, Montpelier, and I am a former city councilor, so feel your pain with long nights. But I'm just here to actually express appreciation. I'm the president of the Foundation for a Resilient Montpelier. You'll hear from John Copans about the River's Edge Master Plan. But just to, I would say from my perspective, a belated thank you for your partnership in the post-flood recovery efforts of the community. Those of you who are on the council know that the City Council and Montpelier Alive and what was then the Montpelier Foundation partnered to create the Montpelier Commission for Resiliency and Recovery, which the mayor was actually an important part of. And since that time have been working together to try to address flooding recovery resiliency efforts. What John's going to talk about tonight is sort of, another step in that process. But just appreciating living in a community that has, a city council that has a lot on your plates, and obviously a community that has a significant tax burden, but wanting and needing to do more for our community, especially in light of the 2023 floods, which, were just of a scale that nobody anticipated in previous planning efforts and so forth. So appreciate that we can work together, that you can leverage us, a group of volunteers, professionals from all different walks of life and perspectives, that we can work together in this planning process. And again, to continue the resiliency and recovery efforts. So just to thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Mr. Owens.
Good evening, Mayor, City Councilors. My name is Chris Owen, and for 40 years, we've owned a nice Victorian home apartment house at 68 East State Street. I'm here tonight representing many of our neighbors, a few who are here this evening, Maria, John Anderson, concerning the disputed city right-of-way claim that takes our front yards, a porch, a living room, building facades, and foundations. Claims the city has made on our private property as part of the East State Street project. Our request tonight is simple. Withdraw the survey and produce one consistent with historic land records and existing survey monuments, one that mutually satisfies city needs and the interests of property owners, one that avoids lengthy and costly legal disputes. Why is this draft survey so troubling? Look at the Eliza Guernsey house built in 1867 at the corner of East State and Cedar Streets. The draft survey has the right-of-way line where the porch meets the house. This home was built when today's East State Street was a private wagon path from Cedar Street to the fairgrounds atop the hill. Uphill, the Oscar Cross House at 54 East State Street was built in 1897, yet the alleged right-of-way runs through their living room and claims 1/3 of the home's square frontage. At 68 East State, when I step off our front porch, I enter the right-of-way claimed by the city. Immediately uphill at 70, 72, 74, and 76 East State, the controversial right-of-way abuts foundation walls and runs under building facades and through front porches on the street side. Is it possible that property owners built over or immediately next to the city right-of-way? Certainly not. Simply stated, the city survey made mistakes, and those errors have been documented by exhaustive research of Montpelier land records and historical accounts by our neighbor, Maria Arsenlis. Maria has law and engineering degrees and has worked for international consulting companies and the U.S. Department of Transportation. Maria's 38-page dissertation carefully reconstructs the history of East State Street and its transition from a private 4-rod horse path to an official city street based on an 1870 right-of-way survey from Main Street to College Street. It's a fascinating historic document if you care to plow through it. The details are many, but the conclusion is clear. The current survey is contradicted by the historic evidence, and the evidence is substantial. The current survey wrongly extends the right-of-way 1 rod or 16.5 feet northward, where in fact it should measure the 4 rod right-of-way southward from the existing property lines. Neighbors are ready to challenge this flawed survey. Noteworthy is neighbor John Anderson, who has decades of legal experience in property rights. There's universal agreement that this project is sorely needed. We've heard much testimony about the rough condition of the road and the failing water and sewer lines. We asked City Hall to reject this survey and to begin discussions with residents between 48 and 76 East State Street now to resolve our property differences. We want this project to proceed without lengthy legal delays and escalating prices that bedevil most public work projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak? Mr. Whitaker.
Steve Whitaker. So the court ruled today, and the council will probably hear in the city manager's report, that the White and Burke contract is no longer part of the litigation. That in effect, y'all got away with violating the city charter by voting a non-competitive, a non-bid private sole source contract at 11:30 at night without the justification required by the purchasing policy. And under our charter, that makes it void. But the judge is not willing to litigate that. But y'all should have it on your conscience because it's just not a healthy way to do business. What the subcommittee, as I walked in, got a public records request response that says there are no records of White and Burke or the city addressing developers regarding this next round of proposals, which are due June 1st. So we were told that there was going to be communications going out to ask them what we want in the new proposals. The city is claiming there is no records. So that's a problem. But more importantly, on March 13th, Ben Doyle sent an email to subcommittee members, Alfano and Gill, not to this council, not to developers, not to the public. He attached notes from the private consultation with a former colleague he described as the housing programs director at USDA and later in charge of development at VHFA, probably the smartest guy I know in the housing space. He warned the members not to share the document and not to respond to it because he knew there was open meeting law exposure. VHFA controls Vermont's low-income housing tax credit allocation and public housing finance. These notes were produced under a FOIA request. Here's what they say about the two remaining advancing developers verbatim. On DEW, throttled by financing, DEW is super leveraged, not a billionaire. On Chinburg, not a ton of financial meat, tried to recruit them to Vermont, but for 80 units or less. Councilor Doyle's email instructed the recipients not to reply, acknowledging doing so would constitute an open meeting law violation, asked that the notes not be shared beyond the subcommittee. None of this was disclosed to the council, to the developers, or to the public. Revised proposals arrive Monday or due Monday. This is not an isolated irregularity. It's one documented example of a pattern that runs through the entire RFP process, and it creates legal exposure to the city from the developers who were evaluated against criteria shaped by information they never received. The city's own regulatory filing with DEC shows that the brownfield will not be remediated until 2030. No building permit issues on an unremediated brownfield. No housing units get built before remediation is complete. The CDBG-DR grant requires housing to be constructed and occupied within that grant performance period. The city can't meet that requirement on its own timeline. That federal money is not coming. One remaining developer lacks independent financing capacity. The other owns its own construction company and would extract an estimated 8 to 10 million in construction margin from Vermont's economy. There's no master plan, no permit path, no remediation before 2030, and the process that produced this choice was conducted in the executive session. An advisory body had no legal authority to convene, making decisions no public body can lawfully make in private. Every counselor in this room knows that. The record reflects it. The barricades blocking the emergency electrical disconnects at the North Branch Knoll. You've been made aware of this for week after week after week. They're still there. They're still a safety hazard. And why the council doesn't want to put these things on the agenda and discuss them? Is it plausible deniability? You can blame it all on Kelly or the departing police chief. It's poor governance. It's reckless. These are, you're violating people's constitutional rights to gather on public property. You can cite the people who make damage or create disturbances, but you can't block the public from using that property. And finally, on the Resilient Foundation for Resilient, the mayor's tax,
10 seconds,
the 20, what?
but 10 seconds remaining.
The 2024 tax return of, in any case, the conflicts of interest between the prior involvement of Ben Doyle, the mayor, Lauren Hurl, even Palin, with this nonprofit agency.
Your time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker, for your comments.
So you don't want to hear about the conflict of interest that you're about to vote on before you vote on it.
I don't want to hear about an alleged conflict of interest from you at this time. There is no conflict of interest for most of us here. If there is, we are adults and we know how to manage those things. Those of us who need to recuse will recuse. Your time has expired. Thank you very much for your comments, though. We really appreciate your engagement. Mr. Hughes, I see your hand up, and then we'll go to Mr. Kelman.
Pleasant evening, Mayor and council members and community, as well as Kelly. First, I'm going to say to Jim, my laptop is working again. Okay, so we're good. So I'm going to reserve most of my time. You guys do have the unhoused thing on the agenda tonight, or is that not on there? I think it is, but it's just.
It is.
It's like number 11. So I'm going to try to hack it out and talk about that stuff at that point. That's helpful. One of the things I just want to thank the mayor for, and the council in general, but the mayor mostly for the way you conduct the meetings and trying to keep things center and everything. And I think it's been really helpful having watched meetings and been part of it, and really do appreciate that. And with that, I will be on later for the other part. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kelman.
Peter Kelman, Montpelier. I'm a little confused now. Are you continuing the procedure of limiting comments to general business appearances and the late night end of meeting, or are you going to allow comments on agenda items?
We are generally sticking to that process. Mr. Hughes is the chair of the Homelessness Committee. It is possible we may have some questions for him and may welcome him at that time.
All right, well, then let me continue then, because I guess that means that I'm going to have to make all my comments now, so I'll try very quickly. When is this policy going to be evaluated? I think it's pretty clear that it hasn't achieved its stated objectives. But I looked at the agenda, the possible agenda items right through July, and I don't see this evaluation of this on that agenda. Secondly, item 8, the Foundation for Resilient Montpelier MOU and contract. Although I have no real objection to this, I have 3 things to note. The first is that, in fact, Mr. Whitaker is correct that the mayor and Councilor Doyle We're both founding members, and Councilor Doyle is still on the board. So you, as you say, you are adults, and I'm sure you'll do the right thing. Secondly, related to this, I would like to know what process and criteria will be used to identify stakeholders. The term stakeholders is used a number of times in this MOU, and I really would like to know how those are going to be determined. Third, I would just like to read a little piece in here, the wording in the document, which says, where is it here? Well, I can't find it, but ordinarily, typically, these kinds of things are handled by the Planning and Community Development Department, but the Planning and Community Development Department lacks the staff time to administer it at this time. I'd like to point out that this is the third or maybe even the fourth time that this reason has been given that the Planning Department lacks the staff as a justification for some other entity, whether it's a consultant or an organization like this, to do the work. And I think it is fair to ask, what exactly is the staff of the Planning Department doing? What are they so busy with that they can't deal with some of these other issues? And I'm wondering whether that is really the reason for this. Item 8, the homelessness update. While it's true that Zach Hughes is the chair, there are other people in the city, both on the committee and at this meeting, and who attended the previous meeting, who might want to say something. And the item doesn't say what the city manager is going to do, is status update. So I can't comment on it now because I don't know what the status update is. It would make a lot more sense for people who have been involved with homelessness, who were at that meeting, who are currently, like myself, to be able to speak at that time and not have to wait until the end of the meeting at 11 o'clock. So I come back to my initial point. This process of not allowing people to speak when an agenda is on the floor doesn't work. It's undemocratic, and it needs to be evaluated, and it needs to be, as promised, using the criteria that were suggested, which right now would show that this is an utter failure. Look at who's talking tonight. The same people who talked before this procedure was put in place as after. You're not going to stop Steve Whitaker or myself or Zach Hughes or Jim Sheridan from speaking our minds. So it didn't work to do that either, which was its real purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelman. Let me comment here. All right. Is there anyone else on Zoom or in the room that would like to speak or say anything? Okay, then that is the end of general business and appearances, and we are going to move on to item number 5, that is the consent agenda. At this time, any counselor may pull any item off of the consent agenda for any reason. Is there any counselor who wishes to pull anything off of the consent agenda at this time? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda? Okay, Counselor Alfano makes a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Counselor Cohn seconds. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of passing the consent agenda as proposed, say aye and raise your hand just so I can see the folks on Zoom, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Consent agenda is passed unanimously. We're on to items 6 and 7. This is where everyone listens to me read. And then we're going to vote on whether or not we're going to accept this language. Okay. So number 6 is a Pride Month resolution. I'm going to read the resolution here. This resolution in support of Two-Spirit, Transgender, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Queer, and More Pride Month 2026. Whereas the mayor and city council of the city of Montpelier welcome, encourage, and actively support diversity and inclusion within our community. And whereas June 25th, 2026 marks the 43rd anniversary of Vermont's first Pride March in Burlington in 1983. And whereas June is the nationwide month to recognize the Two-Spirit, Transgender, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Queer, and More, or 2ST LGBTQ plus community. And whereas celebrating Pride Month raises awareness and provides support and advocacy for the 2ST LGBTQ plus community. And whereas while there has been remarkable progress towards acceptance and equality over time, members of the 2ST LGBTQ plus community continue to face discrimination, intolerance, and hate. And whereas we must commit to support and accept 2ST LGBTQ plus individuals, particularly our youth, who compared to their peers are more likely to experience harassment at school, to suffer from depression, to struggle with substance abuse, and to have attempted suicide. And whereas to strengthen the value of everyone throughout our entire society, we must protect the rights of every individual and remain vigilant in deterring oppression and discrimination against people on the basis of sex, gender identity or expression, or sexual orientation. And whereas we affirm our support for 2ST LGBTQ plus residents in our community and stand with them to protect their civil rights and their ability to live openly, equally, and without fear. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Montpelier on this 29th day of May 2026, that's Friday, that the council recognizes and supports this month of June 2026 as Two-Spirit, Transgender, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Queer, and More Pride Month, and we urge all residents to celebrate and build a culture of inclusiveness and acceptance during this month and every month. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
I will move to adopt the Pride Month resolution.
Thank you, Councilor Alfano. Councilor Brown seconds. The motion on the floor is to adopt the Pride Month resolution as presented. Is there any discussion or debate on the topic? Seeing no discussion or debate, all in favor of adopting this Pride Month resolution, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Unanimously adopted. Thank you all very much. Yes, Manager Curry.
I'd just like to jump in. There will be a flag raising at 9 a.m. on Friday in City Hall that you all are invited to attend, and this will also be right there.
And the flag will fly for the whole month of June, correct? Yes, it will. Yes, it will. All right. I seem to remember that's one thing I can just decide. Yeah, it will. Yeah. All right. We're now moving on to agenda item number 7, a resolution honoring recognizing North Branch Nature Center's 30th anniversary. Before I read this, I'll just let everyone know that there's a big celebration out there this Saturday in the evening at 5 o'clock. I'm going to sing a song. All right. Whereas North Branch Nature Center is celebrating 30 years of nature connection in 2026 in Montpelier on the banks of the North Branch and of the Winooski River. And whereas North Branch Nature Center is Montpelier's only nature center offering a wide range of high quality programs and opportunities for nature-based education, conservation, and recreation to Montpelier and surrounding communities. And whereas the North Branch Nature Center is a treasure to our community with the muddiest mud, fantastic nature festivals, an amazing art gallery and natural history displays, accessible trails, a terrific in-town swimming hole, and year-round events and programs for adults and families. And whereas Montpelier students benefit from North Branch Nature Center's Educating Children Outdoors, or ECO program.
and from Forest Preschool and Robin's Nest Playgroup for our youngest nature lovers, field trips, summer camps, after-school programs, and high school classes. And whereas the North Branch Nature Center stewards 28 acres of undeveloped floodplain, forest, and fields, providing flood mitigation and watershed resilience to the city. And whereas the North Branch Nature Center has enriched the lives of many Montpelier residents for 3 decades, and it is our hope that it will continue to do so for another 3 decades and more. And whereas the city of Montpelier, Vermont recognizes and values the role local organizations contribute to the culture, vitality, and enjoyment of our city for both residents and visitors alike. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the city of Montpelier, Vermont, hereby recognize and honor the North Branch Nature Center and everyone who has contributed to its establishment, growth, and success on its 30th anniversary in operation. Is there a motion to accept this resolution as presented?
I move we approve the resolution honoring the North Branch Nature Center as presented.
Great, thank you. For those of you on Zoom who may not have heard that, Councilor Brown moved that we adopt this. Is there a second? All right, Councilor Alfano seconds. Is there any discussion or debate on the topic? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the North Branch Nature Center resolution as presented, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Unanimously adopted. Thank you very much, everybody. We are on a roll. All right. And now we're on to item number 8, the Foundation for Resilient Montpelier's River's Edge Master Plan. There is a vote here. Councilor Curry, Manager Curry, do you want to say anything about this to tee it up? Or
I'll turn it over to Mike, who has prepared all the memos in consideration for you all.
and
Much more history on these discussion.
we're also inviting John Copens, the Executive Director of the Foundation for Resilient Montpelier. Take it away, gentlemen. Thanks.
Good evening, Mike Miller, Director of Planning and Community Development, and also resident of District 3. And
John Copans, Executive Director, Foundation for Resilient Montpelier.
all right, so we have kind of a mixed bag for you tonight. We've got 3 requests, and I'm going to try to go through it and try to hit a middle ground, not too much information, but not too little information, to really kind of explain why it's laid out the way it is for you. So the development of the River's Edge Master Plan has been an idea initiated by the Foundation for Resilient Montpelier to help our community re-envision our downtown. It received strong support during the development of our new master plan and identified as a priority for enhancing flood resilience and creating public access. At the request of FRM in the fall of 2025, the city supported their application for a municipal planning grant to cover some of the costs of developing the River's Edge plan. That application was approved and a grant agreement signed with DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, earlier this year. On February 26, 2025, the City Council authorized the use of up to $100,000 for 3 initiatives for the Commission on resilience and recovery, which included this River's Edge plan. So typically these municipal planning grants and projects would be managed by the planning department, but our department lacks the staff time to administer it at this time. If you've got questions, I can go over why. The River's Edge plan has been a concept that FRM has conceived and advanced, and they would like to handle the RFP process and work with the consultant to develop the final plan. Handing project management to a third party required special approval of DHCD, which has been authorized. The staff will continue to manage the grant funds as we are the fiduciaries of the grant, so all funds would go from us to the consultant, and we'll explain a little bit more of that later. The grant requirements from DHCD state that we cannot cover staff time for administration and project management with any of the grant funds, and this requirement is carried forward to FRM. For FRM to be paid for their work, if they would like to be paid for their work, they would need to be paid separately. And we have 2 sources of funds that we have for this project. One, as we pointed out, were the $30,000 municipal planning grant. And the other one is we have $100,000 in reserve for FRM at this time. We actually have 200,000, and we'll talk about the other 100,000 in the next agenda item. But they have $100,000 that is general fund money that had been set aside for them that they never used. So in order for us to not violate any grant conditions, staff at FRM and the Planning and Community Development suggest splitting the project into two separate agreements. First is an MOU, which would cover paying FRM for their work and any stakeholders, including funds from, and this would be paid out of the reserve funds. Second, we would have a contract with FRM, which they would use to solicit the contractor and hire and pay for the development of the River's Edge Master Plan. And that would be paid out of the grant and partly out of the reserve funds, because to do the project is going to cost probably $100,000, so only a $30,000 grant. So their funds will be split into two. To make all this happen, the first thing we would need to do is to have an authorization to spend $81,040 from the FRM reserve account. Some of the money will cover the FRM work, as I mentioned, and a portion of the stakeholders, and another portion will cover the consultant work that will happen after the RFP. And then we will need to approve each of the two agreements, one contract and the one MOU. Hopefully that's a little bit complicated, a little bit convoluted, but we've got two sources of funds. We've got two contracts in order to produce one project, which John and FRM will work to manage.
Had clarifying questions,
Yes.
Councilor Alfano.
In our cover sheet, there's a request for $81,040, which is broken into two parts, $40,040 and $36,
Yes.
which is $76,040. And at the bottom is a consultant fee of $45,000, which would make up the $5,000. I'm just wondering if the $40,000 in the motion for the expenditure of $81,040 is a typo, or is it a coincidence? There's $5,000 that I don't see in the.
Yep. Amazing how many times I can look at this and have written that out, how many times, and still ended up with the math not making. Reserve account. Just trying to make sure I've got it in the right area.
Please take your time and don't feel rushed.
So the consultant would have. We haven't figured out.
We have 75 to the consultant. And we use the planning grants. So it should be 45. Not the consultant.
There's the 41.
While they're looking, Manager Curry, you want to say something?
Yes, important to clarify, you can also approve the up to amount, and we can confirm if it's less and make sure that we don't go over.
It's an option.
So you're saying that would be the 45,040, 45, and 45,040 would be this first number.
That's correct.
45.
5. No.
Yep. All right, so you are correct, Councilor Alfano. It would be 45,040 to make that motion correct.
Which agrees with the numbers provided at the bottom of the document. So, okay. Great.
Yep, and matches what's in attachment B of the contract, which is what I was going back to, because that's where we were basing the overall structure on.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other clarifying questions before we entertain a motion? I would like, if you're able, without taking too much time, to address some of Mr. Kelman's questions, just to edify the public. What is meant by stakeholders? And You said that you could clarify some of the reasons staff lacks time. If you don't have to go into a huge monologue about it, but just give us some idea so that the members of the public may have some idea of what we're up against.
Do you want to handle the stakeholder question first?
I would be happy to. Again, John Copans from Foundation for Resilient Montpelier. The success of this project really hinges on active community participation, and public engagement is going to be essential in terms of implementation. You know, when I don't want to actually prescribe sort of which stakeholders we're going to engage, because I think that's part of the discovery process as you begin the planning process. I will say that we have had some initial conversations with a few stakeholders that we consider important. Those would include Friends of the Winooski River, that clearly has purview and in fact has provided direct support to a very similar project in Barrie called the River Access Task Force. That's a good model for some of the work that we're going to be doing. Vermont River Conservancy is another stakeholder. And then I would also mention a couple of organizations that serve the houseless community here in Montpelier. Another Way and Good Samaritan House is also really important in that they can help us access constituencies that we might not be able to reach otherwise, and constituencies that have a presence and who we really want to engage in this process as we think about public spaces and the riverfront.
And so these funds would be used to help them cover the costs of the work that they'd be asked to do in contributing?
Ultimately, for these organizations, their participation, when we invite their participation, that's precisely some compensation for their time is important.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Miller.
All right, so I didn't come prepared with a list, but I quickly tried to jot down a number of the projects that I am personally working on. There's a lot more that goes on with my other staff members as well, but these are grants that would generally be managed by myself. But although we do have,
I'll just interrupt you for a second. Please don't feel the need to defend all the work that you do or list every task that you have in the day.
If people are going to call it out at some point, you've got to go and at least put on the record so the public who doesn't know understands what we have been working on, including the Country Club Road RFP. Although we do have a consultant, that we do have considerable staff time that also goes into that process, even if the consultant is managing it. The community development block grant that we received, the DR fund, that application process, and the grant admin, we're currently working through pre-award right now, which is a significant effort to go through, and working with the manager on this. We have the zoning update that the planning commission's worked through. That is on my plate. That's a big push of the city council, the priority to work on that, to try to get our zoning streamlined as much as possible. We just completed the subdivision update. We're working on the Home Farm Way pre-award, which is, we've got a federal grant, hazard mitigation grant, to go and work on that project. A lot of the work of the commission and others on this project, but it's held up in pre-award, so we have to work through that. We'll talk about that in the next agenda item. The related item to that is Pioneer Dam. We're also working on pre-award for that one. We have City Hall rebuild, so that's a couple meetings a week as well that we work on. That's along with Kurt and Zach and the manager and Chris Lumbra, but we all have to dedicate time to work on the City Hall rebuild. Then we also have things like zoning fees. I'm on the Regional Planning Commission, the Future Land Use Map, the Tier 1A process. I'm on the Act 121 Legislative Committee, so that's a Senate committee working on statewide flood hazard regulations as to whether or not the state DEC should take over the flood hazard regulations. I am the representative of municipalities larger than 5,000.
I don't want to stop you if you'd like to continue, but
there are others. That was what I came up with in a few moments while I was trying to jot down. So yes, there is an awful lot on my plate, as well as on Matt's and Meredith's and Nick's and Michelle's. So
thank you. Hopefully that's good information to help the members of the public understand what it is your office is up against.
And I think John will do a great job in this project.
I'm sure that too.
So very, very much more, the planning and community development.
Are there other clarifying questions from council before we entertain a motion to approve this? Councillor Gill.
Working on this project, I think this is a good model for government. I've worked in many areas of government and having partners like you as a nonprofit to focus on this work where the city doesn't have capacity to do everything. City is here for many reasons, and we just don't have the capacity to do everything that everybody wants. And so it's really, really important to have partners like you at the table to take on these projects to complete this important work in partnership with the city. So I just wanted to thank you and everyone else on the foundation for taking this on and supporting our work, since we all have the same goal. So just wanted to thank you for that. Thanks.
Well said, Councillor Colton. Thank you. Councillor Doyle.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to echo what Adrian had said and just remind folks that this River's Edge Master Plan really emerged out of the community forums that were held immediately after the flood, where we had 1,000 participants, citizens of Montpelier participate in that process, which I think really demonstrated good community engagement that I know will continue. I also do want to acknowledge that I remain on the board of the Foundation for Resilient Montpelier, so it would be a conflict of interest for me to vote on this item, and so I'll be recusing myself.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other clarifying questions? While we're on the topic of conflict of interest, I am no longer on the foundation board. I did do work with this. One, I don't anticipate needing to cast a vote. This doesn't seem like a terrifically controversial topic. And even so, I don't perceive any conflict of interest. I stand to gain nothing more than the community at large stands to gain from the result of this work. So if need be, I will cast a vote, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. Is there a motion to approve this? I see everyone taking their time because it's going to be a mouthful of words, and take your time.
Well, I was going to leave the numbers out, actually. So there are three
yes.
three motions. So I will move to approve the expenditure of up to $81,040 from the reserve account for the Montpelier Commission on Resilience and Recovery for the purposes of grant match and other costs associated with the development of the River's Edge Master Plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Is there any debate or discussion on this topic? I'm not seeing any. So to restate, the motion on the floor is to approve the expenditure of up to $81,040 from the reserve account for the Montpelier Commission on Resilience and Recovery for the purposes of grant match and other costs associated with the development of a River's Edge Master Plan. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That was everybody in the room. And Councillor Sheridan, any opposed? Hearing none. And there's one recusal, Councillor Doyle. Thank you. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 0. It passes. Is there a motion before us to approve the MOU as attached? Are there any other clarifying questions about that before we make a motion to do so? All right, no clarifying questions. Would anyone care to make that motion? Councilor Alfano, I appreciate you so much.
I will move to approve the attached MOU to establish a formal partnership between the city and FRM to collaborate on the development of the River's Edge Master Plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Is there any debate or discussion on this topic? All right, the motion before us is to approve the attached memorandum of understanding to establish a formal partnership between the city and the Foundation for Resilient Montpelier to collaborate on the development of the River's Edge Master Plan. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Councilor Doyle, still one recusal. So that's 5 again to 0. It passes. Thank you very much. And finally, we would look for a motion to approve the Vermont Municipal Planning Grant. Is there such a motion?
I will move to approve the attached Vermont Municipal Planning Grant Program fiscal year 26 contract for personal services between the City of Montpelier and FRM for project management and the development of the River's Edge Master Plan.
Second.
Okay, well said and well seconded. Thank you very much. Is there any debate or discussion on this topic? Seeing none, I'm going to restate the motion on the floor is to approve the attached Vermont Municipal Planning Grant Program fiscal year 26 contract for personal services between the City of Montpelier and FRM for project management in the development of the River's Edge Master Plan. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? And still one recusal from Councillor Doyle. All right, that's 5-0. It passes as well. Thank you very much, everyone. And we will, if you gentlemen wouldn't mind staying put for 1 second, I think we may need you again on the next piece. We're on to agenda item number 9. The resilience expenses approval for Montpelier Commission on Recovery and Resilience Reserve Fund. Mr. Miller, would you like to tee this up, or Mr. Copans? You guys discuss and figure it out.
I can tee this one up again. The Commission on Resilience and Recovery, as you know, existed for 2 years and received funding from the city in order to support their efforts. Much of their work was supported by grants and donations. When MCRR finished their work and dissolved, $200,000 remained in their reserve account that the city had committed to them. The other item on May 27th on tonight's meeting discussed expending a portion of the first $100,000, but the other $100,000 remains. And city staff has been working to advance several resilience initiatives in the city, and a number of these projects need funding in order to get through the award phase. So the Pioneer Dam Home Farm Way project has received approval for a hazard mitigation grant, but the city needs a phase 1 archaeological assessment at Home Farm Way, a historic and archaeological survey for Pioneer Dam, a bat survey, before being able to access $3.2 million fund. The city has applied for and received $38,000 in funding from a certified local government grant to pay for a portion of the Home Farm Way assessment, but so far has been unsuccessful in securing the rest of the money. Some of these costs may be reimbursed at the end in the future, but we need to assume that they will not. So we need $55,000 to complete all this work this year if we want to begin construction in 2027 at Home Farm Way and at Pioneer Dam. Second, the city also needs money to update our local hazard mitigation plan, which is a partner to the MAPLE plan, which is the local emergency operations plan. So the LHMP is valid for 5 years and ours runs out this fall. Normally, the Regional Planning Commission would develop this plan using federal emergency management funding, but those funds were cut by the federal administration. The local hazard municipal plan is a requirement of many FEMA grants and is a requirement for Vermont's Emergency Relief Assistance Fund, which saved Montpelier millions of dollars in the 2023 flood. Completing this plan is necessary and will cost $11,000, but again, we don't have the resources for that. So speaking with John, his board is willing to release some of the other $100,000 that are in reserve for additional resilience work, such as the ones that have been described. And staff is asking council to authorize the use of portion of those funds for the work that we just described.
Clarifying questions from, thank you for that. Anything to add, Mr. Copans?
I'll just make one little, I think, correction, which is, I think it's important to note that the work of the Montpelier Commission for Recovery and Resilience was funded entirely without city funds. I think there's a little bit of potential for confusion about spending down other money in addition to this $200,000. In fact, that effort was entirely done with private funding and grant funding. So I think that's just for the historic record. I will say that we We talked as a board very much about the Five Home Farmway project and Pioneer Dam removal. And as you all know, are very enthusiastic about that project and about it proceeding as quickly as possible. So this feels like a very, very appropriate use of those points.
And can you just say a little bit more about, there's 100,000, there's 200,000, some of it is in a city reserve, some of it is in foundation reserve, or how does this work? Can you just sort of say that a little more clearly for everyone at home?
Trying to be efficient about that. I think back in 2024, we actually the Commission for Recovery and Resilience came before council. There was some excess funds at that time. We asked at that time for $100,000 for projects to be made later. Those dollars, when it came time for the FY25 budget, the commission had not spent down that $100,000. We came back before council simply to assure that that $100,000 was going to be maintained. I think there was probably some misinterpretation at that moment, and instead of sort of maintaining $100,000, there was an additional $100,000 added, so it became $200,000. Always held within the city, to be clear, but with collaboration with the commission in terms of how those funds get dedicated. The other little piece, and we've already alluded to this in the previous agenda item, is we did come back before council in, I think, January of 2025 with a list of 3 projects for dedication of that $100,000, including the River's Edge Master Plan, and that was agreed to at that time as well. So does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. I think that's very clear. Any other clarifying questions from council before we entertain a motion? Councilor Doyle.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, just to avoid any kind of confusion. I feel like we've thrown in a lot of acronyms around, and there's a lot of Montpelier Commission Recovery. So the initiative that was formed after the flood was the Montpelier Commission for Recovery and Resilience. That was formed in partnership with the City of Montpelier Alive and the Montpelier Foundation. Since that time, after the 2-year charge of the commission ended, the remaining board members of the commission merged with the Montpelier Foundation to create the Montpelier Foundation for Resiliency. And so I just want to, Foundation for Resilient Montpelier.
Foundation for Resilient Montpelier.
Thank you. I just want to try to confuse people a little bit more with all the names.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Ben.
I succeeded. And I don't really think that I have a conflict here, but I think just in the interest of, I'm just going to recuse myself from this vote as well, having anything to do with this.
That's fine. Is there a motion to approve this expenditure? We're talking about $66,000 to be released from the MCRR fund for 55,000 and 11,000. Shall we get that right? 55,000 for the, sorry, I'm just going to note, I thought a bat survey, what is that? Is that some kind of thing? And I looked it up. It's literally a survey about bats.
Yes.
So yeah, because, we love bats. All right. So those are the 2 things. Councilor, is there anyone other than Councilor Alfano who would like to take a stab at making a motion on it? Yeah. All right. You know what? Let's go for it. Councilor Alfano.
I will move to approve the expenditure of $66,000 from the reserve account for the Montpelier Commission on Resiliency and Recovery for the purposes of advancing the 4 resilience projects outlined in the cover memo.
Okay. And another second from Councilor Brown. Thank you both for your heavy lifting this day. Is there any discussion or debate on the topic? I don't see any. So the motion before us is to approve the expenditure of $66,000 from the reserve account for the Montpelier Commission on Resilience and Recovery for the purposes of advancing the 4 resilience projects outlined in this memo. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Great. That looks like 5. Any opposed? I don't see any, and I think we have 1 recusal. Councilor Doyle's already said he's going to recuse. So we're 5-0. It passes. Gentlemen, thank you very much for all of your work. It's really important for our community. Thank you for being here tonight to help us understand better. Yeah.
I'll just say thank you very much to the council. We very much appreciate your partnership and look forward to working with you on the River's Edge Master Plan and your work in engaging your constituents on the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, it is 7:32. 7:31. We are moving on to item number 10. The long anticipated feast program updates.
Okay, well, I'd like to welcome up Kim Myers, who is our Feast Program Director. And I don't know if Amy is going to join her. There might be some questions, and this will probably be the last time that Amy Pitton has the opportunity to come before you as the Senior Center Director prior to her retirement that we celebrated with a lovely lunch at the senior downstairs yesterday. And I'm very excited. They wanted to come and bring this update to you all about the vitality and health of the program, some changes that are being made. We have made an offer for Amy's replacement, but I'm hoping we'll be accepting it any moment now. And Amy has agreed to onboard this new director for a period of time in June. So I'm very grateful for that. And I know there's always lots of questions about the senior center and, you know, what the forward-looking future is for it. And, you know, that is something we will continue to talk about over the, you know, forthcoming year and years. And one of the things that our new director is likely to do is some intentional strategic planning. So I would say this is a great opportunity to hear about the health of this program. And if there are questions about sort of the bigger vision and future of Senior Center, we are going to be contemplating that with more intentionality in the coming months. So I'll turn it over and with you.
Thank you.
For the record, you're welcome to come back as often as you like.
We're not going to make you vote on anything, so you must sit back and enjoy the rest. My name is Kim Myers, and I am the program manager for the Senior Meals program here. And I am just here to provide an update. And I'm going to begin with a brief history of the program, because some people may not know about it. The roots of the Meals on Wheels and Senior Nutrition Program in Montpelier go back many years and have taken many forms. The history merges with the Montpelier Senior Activity Center in 2013, when Feast was formally established as a partnership between MCC, Just Basics, and Good Taste Catering. It grew out of a long community effort to ensure that older adults and vulnerable residents had access to meals and support. Over the years, annual meals served grew from approximately 10,000 meals to nearly 17,000. And since then, the program has gone through multiple partnerships, operational models, and transitions. As part of the continued evolution, I wanted to share that the Feast Senior Meals will be transitioning to Montpelier Meals on Wheels as our primary public-facing name. Meals on Wheels is a name recognized and a name people recognize and understand. And our work has grown beyond traditional meal delivery, but we want our name to better reflect both our history and the core work that we do. Today, the program operates out of the kitchen at the Montpelier Senior Activity Center here at 58 Berry Street. I'm the program manager. We have a chef, and beyond that, our program functions because of an incredibly committed volunteer team. Montpelier Meals on Wheels is a city program of the city of Montpelier. It operates in a city-owned building. The employees are city employees, and the finances are administered by the city finance department. To date, the program has not received monetary funds from the city's general fund. However, in FY27, $28,000 of the $124,000 general fund appropriation was designated for the program. The balance of our $241,000 budget comes from federal reimbursement dollars, grants, contracts, fundraising efforts, and donations. Federal funding comes through the Older Americans Act, which is administered through the Central Vermont Council on Aging. And we maintain a contract with the Vermont Center for Independent Living to provide meals to individuals living with disabilities. And we recently began a partnership with Good Samaritan Haven, providing meals for unhoused neighbors. I'm actively working on trying to find more grant funding to support that. Financially, our program has historically operated under pressure, and most recently, the program was operating at a significant deficit. In response, in 2025, a Feast working group identified long-term sustainability as a major priority and outlined recommendations around financial planning, fundraising, and strategic developments. Over the past year, much of my work has focused on implementing those recommendations. I developed a fundraising and development plan, expanded grant writing efforts, strengthened partnerships, and outside funding sources. Montpelier Meals on Wheels has received over $50,000 in new grant funding this year and recently secured grant funding to support a broader strategic planning process. I'm happy to report that we are financially back on track to sustainability. Now that I've talked about the financial piece, I want to tell you a little bit about the real work that happened in our program. Last year, we served more than 18,000 meals, reaching roughly 260 community members in different ways. This current fiscal year, we are on track to serve close to 20,000 meals, and demand is increasing. Alongside meal service, one of the most meaningful parts of our work has become our workforce development program. 5 years ago, we partnered with local schools in response to a growing need for students who are struggling in traditional classroom settings and needed another pathway towards graduation. What began as a small partnership has grown into a program that has changed the lives of many students. This year alone, we have 6 students earning diplomas who have told us that they would not be graduating without our program. We currently work with approximately 20 students from Montpelier High School, U32, and the new school. Students earn school credit while participating in real work that directly supports their community. We rely on approximately 60 volunteers who do much more than prepare meals and deliver food. They mentor the students and create an environment where young people feel successful and supported. Our volunteers check on homebound neighbors and keep them connected and safe at home. Over time, our kitchen has become something increasingly rare, an intergenerational space where high school students and older adults teach and support one another. There's a lot of joy in our kitchen, and that impact extends beyond production and delivery. This summer, some local businesses are supporting the program, and we are going to be able to hire some of our students to work in the kitchen through the summer. After 5 years of partnership with local schools, we have curriculum, strategies, and experience, and we see a significant opportunity to continue deepening this work moving forward. We provide weekly community lunch, grab and go meals. Our kitchen manager works with gleaning organizations and local farms to incorporate as much local food into our meals as our budget allows. Our community meal attendance has more than doubled over the past year, and we continue to see increased demand. We are currently sustainable, but I think it's important to distinguish between sustainability and stability. As I stated, much of our progress has come through grants, fundraising, partnerships, and continuously building outside support. That work has made a huge difference, but grants do end and funding priorities change. The question moving forward is not simply whether we can piece together another year, it's whether we want essential community programs to operate through uncertainty, or whether we want to make a stronger commitment to work that we know is making a difference. I think Montpelier Meals on Wheels is one of those programs that is making a difference. The program feeds people, it supports independence, it creates pathways for students, it builds partnership, and it addresses the day-to-day needs of our community. We have something here that is working very well. I believe it's important to recognize it and strengthen it and continue investing in it. Some of the systems that hold communities together are easy to overlook right up until they're gone. I hope that you will take the opportunity to visit us at MCC and the Meals on Wheels program. Join us for lunch on a Tuesday. Come along on a meal delivery route, volunteer in our kitchen, and come and see what a lively and life-giving program Montpelier Meals on Wheels is. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Obviously, the work is very important. If anybody has not been to a Tuesday community meal, I'd recommend it. So
$10.
it's a lively bunch and the food is good. Spitten, do you have anything to add?
I just want to say how proud I am of Kim. Kim has been on the job for a year and a half. She did work for the program prior to that, but had to leave because of a medical issue. And we were so lucky that she wanted to come back to the program and help us to get it back on track. She is a tremendous ambassador for the program. The grants she writes are compelling, and I don't think you've applied for too many grants that you haven't gotten. I think she's got everyone she's applied for. So including a 3-year, $30,000 a year grant. This is the first year of that grant. And so grant writer or the grantees really seem to like this mix of high school students and seniors. That's a very a program that they really like to support. And yeah, you should come in and meet the kids. They're great. They're great. So I'm really proud of the program. I hope that Kim's around a long time to keep going and do some more creative work with it.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? Councilor Brown.
Thank you. Thanks for the update. I really appreciate it. So I'm thinking about how this program that is feeding people in Montpelier fits into kind of an overall strategy or plan or lack thereof for combating food insecurity in Montpelier. I know that Meals on Wheels federal program, there's a source of money for a particular use, and you have found ways to kind of leverage that and expand on it so that you have these community meals that anyone can go to a community meal, right? And it sounds like you're being really creative about finding other ways to bring people in to benefit from this. And I'm wondering if there are things that the city could do to support more of that so that there could be, or if there are other funding sources available so that we could be thinking not just about seniors, but about families who can't afford $10 a month for a community meal, but or a meal, not a month, a meal. And if there's a way that we could sort of learn from this program and use it to be addressing food insecurity on a greater scale.
I think there are a lot of opportunities. The particular one that I'm looking into now is our work with Good Sam. They purchase meals from us and have expressed a need for more meals. And so we're looking into ways to find funding to expand the amount of meals that they can get from us. And I think that there are a lot of creative ways that this program and our kitchen can be utilized, things like the summer meal program and some other things like that. So I'm definitely interested in talking more about it and brainstorming.
You deliver meals 7 days a week?
We deliver meals 4 days a week, but people can get up to 7 meals a week. So they get some frozen meals so that my volunteer drivers don't have to drive on the weekend.
Someone had a question about the Meals on Wheels name.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a new relationship? Is this an existing relationship? And we're just shifting the forward-facing branding of it. Can you just speak a little bit to that person?
We have been members of Meals on Wheels. I'm trying to remember Meals on Wheels of America for many years now. And part of that is us being able to use that name. So we've had a relationship with them for a while. And while we loved our name Feast, it often came up, people saying, what is Feast? What does Feast stand for? And I think most people across the United States, if you say Meals on Wheels, they know what that is. And so it felt like a good time for us as things are kind of expanding for us to take on a name that people will really recognize and be able to get behind.
Great. Councilor Alfano.
Just following up on that, are you at all worried that people will be confused and want to contribute locally, which I think changing the name will encourage people because they recognize it, but will they be confused and accidentally contribute to the national charity and the money doesn't end up in Montpelier.
I don't think so. There's a lot of programs nationally that use that Meals on Wheels. So I think it's just a matter of communication and making sure people know the right place to donate when they come to a meal or come to our website.
Great. I think if it works the way you hope it does, it'll make a big difference. Yeah. Thanks for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Councilor Alfano, if you'd like to learn more about what that process is, I'd encourage you to make a donation to Meals on Wheels and then see what that experience is like and report back to us. That'd be great. Great. Well, any other questions or comments from council? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ms. Myers, Ms. Bitton, for coming in and
Thank
for
you
all
so
the work
much.
that you do.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And as if on cue, Mr. Hughes enters the room as we move
Could I interrupt? I'm freezing.
You're freezing. Yes.
And I wonder if we could either kill this or just redirect it to the center of the room and give Zach a little coolness.
It looks like Ms. Prim is on the case.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thanks, Val.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, we keep putting on more.
I know. I almost didn't bring this. Okay.
As we transition to this next item, I just want to take a moment to say, in response to some of the comments that were made earlier about the process that we use for taking public comment, that there was a time for trying that. There is data being collected. It will be evaluated and it will be rediscussed. Having said that, I believe that as the mayor, I do have discretion to allow comment if I feel that we want that. And so I may allow additional comment during this next topic, but that will be up to me and we'll see how it goes. We are moving on to agenda item number 11, the homelessness update. And Kelly Curry, I think you're going to update us on some of the progress and discussions that have come out of the April 29th meeting. Take it away.
Yes,
Thank you.
happy to. Daily conversation around this topic, and I know you all have requested that this be on each council meeting for an update in the foreseeable future, which is fine. So we've proposed a list here that were based on the outcomes from the special meeting at the end of April. You can obviously add to that. I'm happy to talk about more, happy to add more to the list and continue reporting out on this is in sort of probably the order that we took, not necessarily the order we took things away from that meeting. So no order of priority here, but relative to the first one on the list. So we were staff was charged with working to identify some potential locations where we could provide some picnic tables for day use that would reduce and minimize conflict with other public uses. And so I convened a staff team that included our health inspector, our fire chief, DPW, our economic and community development specialist, our facilities coordinator, myself, our parks director. We all jumped in the van, the city van, and went around and did about a 2-hour tour to a variety of locations in the city that we have some degree of interest, ownership over, or relationship, with owners relative to an easement or something like that. We identified a number of these locations and, presented them to the homelessness committee for their input. Some of these locations could offer additional services, such as location of restrooms or trash. Some would be trickier to do that. Some are potentially, fine locations, but far enough out of town that we weren't sure folks would use it anyway. or are locations where we think, we could place these amenities, but are perhaps too close to a road. So some of the feedback from the homelessness committee was to review these sites, hear our update from Matt Jalasik, who is the staff contact that supports the homelessness committee. And as I understand it, the committee would like to replicate that tour, and we're waiting for a cohesiveness around a date. So picking a date, and we're happy to provide the van and meet up with everybody and take them around and either look at new sites or revisit some of the sites that we had proposed for that. So that is that work in progress. The encampment policy language. So there was some policy concepts that were presented to the homelessness committee at their last meeting relative to, so it's all focused on overnight emergency sleeping, but relative to some discussion about expanding the definition for high sensitivity area to include the downtown areas. As I understand it, there's, some feeling that there's not really a lot of emergency overnight sleeping happening in the downtown. So while you could add the language, it may not have any great effect for that type of use. And there's concern that calling out that type of use for overnight emergency sleeping may start to creep into daytime restrictions around uses in the downtown area, which are, I think, both politically and legally problematic. And so they were not heavily discussed when we were talking about the encampment policy language in particular, but I know that that continues to be a point of conversation. And, again, we would have to be very thoughtful about any type of additional regulation around daytime use, because those things have been addressed by courts at every level. And so I'll just leave that at that. Additional conversation about the encampment policy was relative to the proposing some definitions for the storage of items that are collected at camps, whether abandoned or not, and trying to provide some clarity around the types of items that should be retained and the types of items that could be discarded. The criteria around things that would be discarded are relative to those that were, dirty, unsanitary, broken, unhealthy, those kinds of things. There wasn't a lot of contention around proposing that language. There was some discussion around the storage of the items in the pod and who should be, responsible for reuniting people. And so the feeling from Street Outreach, who right now in the policy has a role because they're leaving information for folks at camps about how to get reunited with their pod. That information is currently outdated. And it's very tricky to sort of get the individual who is looking for their items, Street Outreach, and the city who has the keys to the pod all kind of coordinated. And so we're looking at better logistics, or potentially moving the pod closer into town and just having staff manage that. I will say internally for staff, we have spent time working together on a better workflow around how we respond to camps, and which staff are kind of charged with what. For example, the initial visit to the staff, I want police to go because we don't know who is necessarily at these camps. There have been instances of folks who are armed in camps in the past. And so that is just a precautionary measure for staff. And then that is kind of where their role ends. The follow-up visits to camp involve, me and my office, the health officer related to any impacts around these camps of sanitary nature, and those things. I will say we have not had a lot of reports to camps recently. I'd say there was quite a few earlier in the month, the fewer here in the latter parts of the month. We are being very intentional about every time we are going out to a camp to request consent to refer those folks to the situation table and try to offer, better services for them so that their condition can be improved. We have had success around that, and we have had challenges around that. There have been cases that have gone to the situation table where folks have been able to be moved into better conditions, and there have been cases that have been referred to the situation table, and the people have been rejected because they have been disallowed from services many times prior to that. So those remain challenging situations, but that's the condition of how the encampment policy is being considered, potential amendments that may come forward, and how it's being implemented currently. We don't have specific, the homeless committee did not review like specific language update requirements, which we will work on and bring forward for the committee's input and for council's review at a later date. Relative to the feasibility of the city city hall sheltering space, we continue to look into that feasibility and are pricing out what would be some required improvements down there. It can't serve as a cooling shelter right now without investment in some air conditioning, which may not be expensive, but it is required. We have to get additional inspections from state fire, and we have to clarify, tenancy laws relative to short-term versus long-term use and how our use complies with those codes. And so we are looking at all that right now. I will say what I am considering doing is building criteria for not just the shelter space, but for other spaces, whether it be a designated outdoor space, whether it be, across the street for day sheltering or something like that, and just putting together criteria for what the city would offer and what we would expect a partner to offer, and then opening that up for essentially kind of an RFP so that providers can respond to, our offer of partnership. Those criteria would come before you when you do that publicly, but it's not very different to think about what we would apply for an outdoor space, which is what we might provide for an indoor space. And so that's my current thinking about that right now. And I guess I'll jump a little bit ahead. I see Beth Ann Myers here. I met with Reverend Meyer and Rick DeAngelis and Ken Russell, and they proposed services and sort of a combined service provider model that would be based on a volunteer cadre who would help manage spaces, whether it be indoor or outdoor. We focused on outdoor. They obviously help provide that management for the indoor space because winter, and talked through that a bit. And I offered what I thought would be important thresholds, services that would need to be offered both by us as a city relative to sanitation and things like that, and then by a provider. And those are the kind of things that would be handed out in an RFP type of process. And so, welcome.
For the folks at home, Beth Mayor of Montpelier called Rick DeAngelis of Just Basics Food Pantry and Ken Russell of Another Way.
Yeah. Thank you. We are also endeavoring, so Matt Jolazek, who supports both the Housing and the Homelessness Committee, which, frankly, are on the same spectrum of need to provide housing in our community, has been doing a lot of outreach work as well. And I have charged him with beginning to set up regular convening of partners around programming. So right now we have partners who meet for the situation table and do case management. And the opportunity is to bring together partners around programs and policies and do that on a regular, because there's a lot of individual conversations that are happening. I'm pulled into multiple conversations. He's pulled into multiple conversations. The mayor and you all are pulled into multiple conversations. And I think we can get a lot more done if we get on a regular cadence with the providers to be talking more frequently to move some of these solutions forward. And so I hope to get that cadence set up really quickly here. And some of that looks like, again, I've talked about our involvement in the situation table, and there's a new regional partnership that the hospital is helping to manage called Thrive, which, is taking a much more regional look at provision of services and solutions. And so looking to see, what I just met about. And then the collaboration with End Homelessness Vermont. Brenda Siegel and I have been kind of in communication. She has been very wrapped up in the legislature. And so we're looking ahead, and I've requested their mobile home, their mobile health unit proposal that she discussed, but she needs to sort of work on that before it's ready to share with us in the future. But we're working on that together as well. And I think that's what I'll leave that at. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some things. I'm sure I'm forgetting some conversations, but we are very actively trying to kind of leverage our opportunities and work with partners to do this.
Thank you. Any questions from council for Manager Curry? Mr. Hughes, do you have anything to add on behalf of the Homelessness Committee?
Yes, I do. It's going to be a little different because Kelly pretty much did all the speaking. I appreciate that because you come to at least a couple of our meetings. Your microphone was broke last time, so we just, had to do the signal talking. I do have a few things. Good evening, Zach Hughes, Montpelier, and current chair of the Homelessness Committee. And I am really happy with the progress that we've had all these conversations, as the mayor's saying, emails, everything. And I do share, before I get to this part, but I want to get to one part about an email that I was part of, and I acknowledge that there is some past issues. They're still being, sometimes brought up because in the past 6 years, we've had a very hard time getting things forward. And I'm not going to blame anybody for that. There's a variety of things in 6 years that have happened, or maybe 7 years now, I'm sorry. But it's, we do bring it up because it is frustrating for us, but we do acknowledge, I acknowledge, and our committee acknowledges that this council has been more receptive, been able to move things a lot quicker, along with City Manager Curry and other folks. And our staff person has been useful as well, Matt. And I just want to say, that it is certainly my mission in the next year to open up further and try to convene people who are outside. This is a challenge, but this is what I wanted to do. Reverend Voorhees was going to set up a group at one time, and we were going to connect with Ken about that or another way, because we want to hear from them as well. Don Little, who's a street outreach worker alongside me, we've been having these talks usually at night. This is where we usually have our conversations, and I think it's important to include everybody as we go forward. I am thrilled that she brought up Thrive. Done some great work with them. I'm thrilled that we're all making these connections. And lastly, I'm thrilled that Beth Ann Mayer is here. We did want to have her come in front of our committee to talk about that meeting that was had and the proposal that her and Ken and have come together with. And so we're looking forward to that. Plus, we are trying to draft up recommendations to bring to y'all at this point, real recommendations. So, like we're in a meeting and Jim will say, how about making that a recommendation? And so that is something that we want to do. And we want these recommendations come forward to y'all and hopefully get it going here. Because I agree with Councilor Gill that we need to actually start doing things. We have talked about things, researched things. I have reports from 5 years, 7 years ago. Okay, y'all have some of those reports. But what if we started to actually do it?
And that's the lunch, that is the analogy I brought up a while back, when I had to sell those friendship bracelets. I had to make them after I got all the money. I had to actually make them. So now we have to do the work. And I still get critiqued in the community, as I should, about what we're doing. And I did want to bring one issue here because it is a live thing. So last night I was asked, what are we doing about that person who lost their property and inadvertently went to the dump? I don't have an answer other than that we're moving forward and making sure that doesn't happen again. Anyway, thank you very much. I'll entertain questions.
Any questions from council?
Or comments.
Councilor Gill.
Say, thank you for that update. Thank you, Kelly, for that update. That was very helpful. And I think more that I forgot. Oh, no. And I think it's not that there is lots of research. There's all the reports that are happening. It's not like it's sometimes the email's bad. I hate
Yeah, it is.
I hate
No, it is.
email because it's not,
it is.
I think it's lost in translation.
Yeah.
And so I want to say that there is so much that is happening. And I think there's so much going on. I don't think people realize, like I talk to a lot of folks and there's so much that our community does to support, the homeless population. I think, it's fragmented. And I think it would be really nice to, and I don't know if this is the homelessness committee's task, but it would be nice to like pull it together. Or is it Thrive? Or is it, the situation table is a piece of it, but there's so many partners that are involved in this. It'd be nice for there to be like an umbrella organization that showcases what services are available, when there's meals, like what is outreach, like how do the police get involved? I think people just don't know what is happening because everyone is doing so much work, but it's all in their own world. And so I think that's like one thing. So it's not like, I don't think my intent was not like, just do the work. There's work happening. So I'm sorry if that came through like negative. And I think one of the other things that, this is a complex puzzle, right? So there's so many pieces, things are moving along, people are accomplishing a lot of the work. And one of the things I'd love for the homelessness committee to look at, and I was wrong when looking at the encampment policy because this is not my area of expertise. So I would love for the homeless committee to think about, like our city, the city of Montpelier. How do we in the city of Montpelier ensure that everyone is safe, right? So I'm thinking I get emails and I get pulled along the sidewalk from folks that aren't going to come to our meeting. They're not going to call in, but they have families. They have little kids. They are afraid to walk downtown. We have businesses that are, really concerned about what's happening in our downtown. And it's not just the homeless that are in our downtown. I think it comes down to a public safety issue of having a 10-year-old child walking to school and being offered drugs, or seeing someone shooting up heroin or getting Narcan. So it really becomes a public safety issue and making our city safe for everyone. And so when you talk about the partners, I would love for the homelessness committee to include students, to reach out to parents that aren't going to come to these meetings. Like they've told me they're not going to come to this meeting, but this is because they get shunned. It's like, they get said, well, you don't have empathy, you don't care. Like it becomes a really like us versus them, like combative, conversation. And that is not the intent. I think we have to look at this through, I said the eyes of like, how do we all work together? We're all one community. How do we make sure that everyone is safe? And what does that look like? I don't have the answer. I don't have the magic wand, but I think there are the people in this community that are willing to have those conversations and willing to figure out like what's going to work, what's not going to work, and how do we, ensure that our businesses through economic development, aren't losing customers because, someone is getting Narcan outside their door. Right. So like, what does that look like? And it's a complex puzzle, but I think that your group working with all these other entities can hopefully come together and come back to council with some proposals and some ideas, because I don't know what they are, and tell us like what to do or what we can do and what we can't do.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to clarify, I do want
Kelly's words to pretty much stand for what I was going to just bring up tonight, because I forgot that other item real quick. And it's just that we looked at those amendments initially. That's our initial. We haven't really dove into it yet. We're still working on that. But, when I saw, I kind of mixed it up because, you read stuff, just like you said, email, you read documents. It could be the same thing. And so what I saw was the word downtown, and I quickly said, there's nothing wrong down there except encampment-wise, if you're talking camping. So I said, okay, where's this going? And so I was going to echo let's just be cautious of where we go with that. I know it's camping. Carrie said it's camping. It said that to us, and I said, yep, that's fine. But I want to be careful with it. And that's how I felt. And then I do want to share my concern that I lose sleep over too. I heard other people lose sleep over this too, which is good because we all are losing sleep a little. But no, seriously, I lose sleep over the issues in downtown. And all those folks who come here and say, I was kept up till 3 o'clock in the morning because of this and that. I do worry about that stuff and the kids particularly. And we look for ways to address this. So we continue to look forward to working with y'all.
Thank you.
Can I just, I also wanted to just update about, because I think this was important and I just forgot it and we did discuss it previously, but, I continue to think that Montpelier really needs some outreach that can be dedicated to Montpelier because, our outreach partners are amazing and they serve a really big area. And, I met with Julie Bond at Good Samaritan yesterday and we talked for 2 hours about so many different opportunities. And this really is one that, I think would be a best use for funding from the fund. I want to spend more time thinking it through about how it might be sustainable because the funding we have now, I don't think would be sustainable beyond the summer months for that type of service. But, she is willing to talk with us more about that. I do think that it would be the opportunity where, that person could go out when we have folks who are, using in public places, causing conflicts to sort of have that direct connection to figure out if there is a different way. Is there more accountability that we can all create as a community around acceptable behavior? Is there direct connection to services where you get that person in that moment? I think street outreach is really the best opportunity for that, in my opinion. So that will be part of, when we sort of figure out, okay, we could spend some money on providing, amenities or improving the downtown shelter space will cost this much. That leaves us with this much. That might get us this service for this period of time. It's kind of where I'm headed to bring back as a proposal to you all, because that is the opportunity to be the most responsive to where the conflicts are happening when they are happening, and not only relying on sort of police to have to do that response.
I have one more thing real quick, and I didn't know if Dawn was online and like to speak.
Yeah.
But I have one thing, and I did want to mention, I was inspired by something they're doing in Burlington, I think, and brought in front of the committee, and it was mainly aimed at the community and businesses, not necessarily the folks out there. But it was, I think they were putting signs up with numbers that could be called for support around different things. So I said, wouldn't it be great if we could do so? It may not be the signs, but could we give the businesses a sheet that would be abbreviated, not the full Washington County sheet that is passed out every year, or that card thing, but something abbreviated that would give them a number so that maybe they could call these other numbers and get the necessary supports. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Cohn.
Yeah, I just want to share this before we move other elements of the issue. Several people reach out to me, and from a public safety perspective, they mentioned that I don't remember, maybe it was before I moved here. They said there used to be cops bike cops in Montpelier downtown. So they suggested maybe we can just like consider bring it back. So it will be good instead of cops are walking around and some people might be not happy with it, but they can bike and people see them. So I just want to mention because I promised them I will mention this. Thanks.
Thank you. I would like to offer the opportunity, Reverend Mayor, if you would like to say something. Dawn Little, you have your hand up. Dawn is also part of the street outreach. Yes. Dawn, would you like to speak?
Yeah, just a couple quick, nothing real constructive, but just a couple quick reminders. One is that not all of the bad behavior is done by people who are homeless. The other thing is it has been said that street outreach and the homelessness advocates do not have a concern for other citizens or merchants, and that's really not true. I think we need to make a distinction between actual physical danger versus, yes, I see a homeless person in the distance and I don't want to see that. So as we look for a solution, I think we need to keep that in mind. And we are very, very concerned about putting, I mean, historically, we have put places out there where people hang out that are right in the middle of pedestrian paths that are widely used by students and joggers and just people going for a walk. And I think one of the things we need to do is provide other places for people to go that don't intersect directly with places the public has to be. So that's it. I mean, we're very concerned about direct physical danger and about people coming very closely into contact with behavior that's disturbing to them or threatening to children. But again, it's one thing to see people in a distance and understandably be concerned about what direction we're going as a city and a community. And it's another thing to have to walk directly past a person that you don't know who may be intoxicated. So I just like to keep those things in mind when we are looking for solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Little. Reverend Mayor, do you have anything to add? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kelman, oh, sorry, but before you go, Mr. Kelman, Councilor Brown, go ahead.
Thanks. I thank you for this update, Kelly. Thank you for putting so much time and effort and the follow-up. I love that all these different ideas that have popped up in different settings you've got on your list to kind of let us know what's happening. I really, really appreciate that. In particular, I want to thank you for the coordination between all these different groups and everything, and that is so essential. So I feel very hopeful with that happening. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the public safety part that people keep bringing up. And I think and Dawn made a really important point that it's not just homeless people who are causing public safety concerns, and that we need to always be really careful to be clear that we're talking about behavior. We're not talking about people. We're not talking about, whether someone has a place to sleep indoors tonight or not, because I imagine that most of the criminal behavior in Vermont is caused by people who do have a place to sleep inside. And so, but we have to be really clear that there's certain kinds of safety related behaviors that we don't want going on. We don't want our 10-year-olds offered drugs. We don't want, those things that are truly dangerous to happen. And one of the things that has come up, and I can't remember exactly where the last time I heard this was, but I know I've heard from residents telling me that then when they call the police about some problem that's being caused by homeless folks, the police tell them, well, we've been instructed not to do anything about that. City council doesn't want us to enforce these rules. I don't know if the police are actually saying that, or, it doesn't sound like something that I would expect the police would say, but I've heard it more than once that there seems to be this idea out there that the police don't have the authority from the council or from the manager or from wherever to be able to actually enforce things like public drinking and, other kinds of problematic behavior. So I just want to be really clear about that. And I don't know if we need to put this on a future agenda so we can have more of a conversation about it, or maybe with new leadership coming into the police department, it's a good time to really clarify that, what we do expect or don't expect. And then tied in with that also is trying to move away as much as we can from expecting the police to deal with all these problems. Because if there's a law enforcement issue, we definitely want police to deal with that. But if you're not really sure what's going on, and I really, really appreciate Zach's idea of providing downtown businesses with numbers to call so that there's something going on out there, may or may not be technically criminal, may or may not be a law enforcement violation, but it's a problem in some way. Maybe there's somebody else that they can call. And if we can increase our support to outreach or increase our relationships with other support organizations, then not ask the police to do the things that aren't really their job, I think we'll be in much better shape.
Thank you.
I would just say that the police department does upload their monthly incident logs. And so it is available for the public to review, what they're responding to and on dates and, the types of infractions that are occurring, just as a resource to, I think, fill in an answer about that question. And folks can form their opinion about whether they think it's enough or not too much, or, all that. And that is just on the website, look up police department, and their reports are right here on it.
Councillor Gill, and go ahead. And then Mr. Kelman, you will be coming up soon.
I just wanted to follow up on what Carrie said. So I'd love to get clarification on the role of the police officer in enforcing public safety in our downtown, because I've heard from merchants and residents and families that when they do call the police and they feel like they've said that they feel like they're in danger, the police said that they aren't responding. It just seems a little off, and I'm not sure where the disconnect is and what kind of clarification we may need, but that I've heard that from multiple people.
Okay,
we haven't even talked about that. It's just, I feel like if you said that, I've heard the same thing, probably from different people. So I think it is probably at some point to get clarification for us and decide what to do.
I'll just add, the plural of anecdote is not data, right? But anecdotally, I've also had conversations with police officers, and I know that they are approaching people with the goal of treating everyone with dignity and respect in mind. And that doesn't mean ignoring issues. And it's also true, many things are true at once, right? And if it is also true that police are enforcing, say, not public drinking in ways that maybe don't result in citations or arrests, but do result in those people stopping drinking at that moment. And at the same time, the police are never going to catch 100% of public drinking. And so when we see something happening that we don't like or that makes us uncomfortable, it doesn't mean that the police are not doing their level best to mitigate those things. And it is just impossible that because we have police, we're going to have no crime or no public intoxication or what have you. I feel like this whole topic is riddled with multiple things that are true. It is true that the city could offer X, Y, Z, and so forth solutions, and also that we don't have the resources or the public will to do that. It's also possible that it's not us and them. There's only us, and excuse my language, some of us are assholes. Some unhoused people are assholes, and some housed people are assholes, and they don't represent the most of us. Sorry, I feel like I'm preaching now, and let's go to comment. Mr. Kelman, go ahead. I don't think we're setting a timer, but just, please try to share constructively and keep it as brief as you may.
I will. I think the city manager did lay out very clearly an update of what was talked about with the homelessness committee. I think it's very, very good. And I think that we should pay a lot of attention to what Dawn Little said and also what the mayor just said. I'm going to focus just on one particular issue. Look, I've been an educator all my life, and what we have here and what we have in our society is a need for better education, that is knowledge and understanding of issues, and the ability to separate what we feel from what is factually the case. And I think that's a little bit what the mayor was just talking about. I think that these complaints that Councilor Gill and Brown and everybody is hearing are coming from people who are afraid. They have fears, and the fears cloud their judgment of the facts. The police cannot arrest people for things that are not criminal. The police are there to keep the peace. And if somebody is walking down the street and looks scary, the police are not going to intervene. And when people see something, they're not necessarily reporting accurately because they have fears. The Parker Advisors Report, the third leg on that stool was education. Education meaning knowing and understanding the facts. It is a fact that many of the people who are out there panhandling are not homeless. It is a fact that the people who are dealing drugs are not homeless. So we got to be very careful. When we're talking about people who are housing insecure, that does not mean that they are ipso facto the people who are causing the problem. We also have to be clear that there's a difference between camping out in the woods in good weather and downtown. People aren't camping downtown. So let's make sure that when we, and this is the city manager said this, we said, be very careful that when you've got these camping criteria, that does not apply to downtown unless someone is camping downtown. Similarly, you've got to distinguish between camping in the summer and finding a place for people to be when it's cold, really cold outside, but cold at all. So we've got to really be very much more clear in these distinctions than I'm hearing quite a bit of tonight. And I think that Don Little and the mayor and the city manager all, I think, brought those things to the fore. Let's be clear. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. I think that it is 8:30 at this point. If there, so Mr. Bellini, I apologize. I think we're going to close public comment at this point. Mr. Doyle, Councilor Doyle, you did have your hand raised as a councilor. I want to give you the chance if you wanted to ask or say nothing. Okay. Is there anything?
I'm sorry. Actually, Mark, sorry. I do actually have a question. Then maybe this is something I can just educate myself offline, but, I was just like looking at the Montpelier Police Review Committee and some of the recommendations that were there around public drinking and, just wasn't sure the degree to which the council had actually adopted those recommendations. I don't know the history on that. Maybe other people that were on the council do, but, there was a recommendation in there to deprioritize enforcement of public drinking ordinance or of public drinking. And so I just don't actually know what the policy is. And I'm wondering if other people are similarly confused.
Councilor Brown.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The council spent a lot of time looking at all those recommendations and hashing through all of them. And there was a recommendation to repeal the public drinking ordinance. And we spent a lot of time on that and decided not to do it. And so but then this remaining question of, did we say, try not to, go easy in your enforcement of it or, that kind of thing? Like, I think that's what's a little unclear at this point, and that it might be helpful to talk about that again, maybe, or, if there was no motion passed saying we instruct the police to turn a blind eye to public drinking, then there isn't one. So
if I may offer a suggestion, Manager Curry, is that something that you can dig up what the current official policy is and bring it back for us to discuss and review at a later time?
Yes, I
I will say, I think this is more complicated than just that. For example, having an ordinance on the books that can be enforced and has been enforced resulted in numbers of charges that got thrown out and de facto had no accountability to them. Now, it may be difficult for me to find any history of decision-making around how that accountability frayed and how the ordinance is being implemented now. I can do my best to tell that story, but I think it's not going to be complete. So you can draw that, provide a framework for you, but I can't promise that it's not going to be filling in the blanks by people's own opinions and perspectives.
Great.
Well, thank you. Councillor Gill.
Just one last thing. So I've brought this up multiple times. I'm going to bring it up again. And so one of the things that the homelessness committee back in, I was trying to pull it up, I think it was 2024. You've all been thinking about this for a really long time. And so I think it would be a good idea to pull this back up, dust this off, and work with the school district to think about, you received a proposal from Think Again training consultant that would come in and work with the schools, talk about education, classism, like having that education piece is so critical. And the committee did do that work. You do have a proposal. I mean, it's a few years old, but I think this has been talked about. And I think it's time to just take action on it. Let's figure out where we can get funding for this consultant. Let's work with the schools. Let's do education, because that is a very important piece of this complex puzzle that I don't see is being done. I think the schools are a good audience, and I've reached out to them a couple of times and they haven't, bid at my proposal, but I think we can keep trying and seeing what we can do. But I think I'd like for that to continue because, as Peter said, education is important. And Dawn, I think that's where we could focus our time and within our sphere of control, get something done.
Thank you. So this topic is going to be on every agenda going forward. So this work is to be continued. Mr. Hughes and the entire homelessness committee, thank you for your work. Please continue to focus your work on bringing concrete recommendations back to us that we can consider implementing or asking clarifying questions about. Manager Curry, you're doing a great job. Thank you very much. Keep, to be continued, right? Go ahead.
Suggest that relative to framing this conversation, I do think it is important to sort of hold separate, activities around the condition of being unhoused and substance use disorder behaviors, and they do cross over. They frequently cross over. You talk to service providers and they cross over, but maybe it would be helpful to talk about them in the same update, but a little bit separately.
And before we take a break, since I get just the last word, I want to say I think that a big part of this sort of education piece we're talking about, recognizing the difference between my discomfort at seeing someone else's situation, which infinitely outweighs my discomfort. I mean, my discomfort is not someone else's crime. That's not always the thing. And I think a big key to that educating ourselves is to engage with people and meet people as people. So as we see these folks on the street, there is another option, which is to learn someone's name, say hello, treat them as a person. There are community meals that happen at the various churches just about every day at 11:30 somewhere. At one church, but it rotates around town, right?
An evening meal on Sunday evening at Christ Church and Saturday morning at Christ.
Is there somewhere where we can, that's pretty easy to, every Monday through Thursday at Trinity. Trinity is the Methodist church next to the library, beyond the library. And Fridays at St. Augustine, that's the Catholic church here. I would encourage everyone, pick a day, go to a community meal. sit and break bread with someone and meet someone as a human being. You will learn something about them. They will learn something about you, and maybe I'll see you there. With that, it is 8:30 something. Councillor Cohn, go ahead.
So I just want to suggest we just finished the Montpelier Community Fund grant award approval. They have been waiting for a long time, and it doesn't take usually that long because they have been doing such a great job.
Sure.
So is it okay?
It is fine. Sorry, I didn't realize that you were here for that. Does anyone have any objection? That's great. Let's move on. We'll complete that and then we'll take a short break. We're on to agenda item number 12. Thank you, everybody who spoke and asked questions about that last topic. Montpelier Community Grant Award approval.
I'm a member of the Montpelier Community Fund Board, along with Dan Grover, Aaron Pratt, Elizabeth Malone, and Jim Sheridan. And I live on 10th Street in Montpelier. So Montpelier Community Fund Board was started in 2012 to address the problem of having like many pages of ballots for funding for the many great nonprofits that our city supports. And we have been level funded since FY23, so it's like the funding year of 2022. And meanwhile, as we all know, cost of living has really been going up. So in FY27 this year, the funding that we have just been proposing in front of you now, we successfully, thank you so much for awarding a 3% increase. And so we had $138,174.50 to give out. From there, we had 46 requests, a mix of amazing nonprofit organizations doing essential work to serve our community, and arts and culture grant applications. We funded 41 of those requests, or we're proposing to fund 41 of those 46 requests. That ranges from $500 to $20,000. As you can see, thank you for the computer to pull up all the things if there's any questions about any of those. And this is a really significant increase. So in FY26 last year, we had 32 applicants. So we had 35 more applicants for, or 35% more applicants for a 3% increase. And so just wanting to flag this for the committee, just recognizing the ever increasing need. And that, as I shared when I was here in the fall, I believe in the fall, that we propose capping the gifts, the grant amounts that people can apply for FY28 to a max of 10 or 20,000 to make sure that we can continue to support the many important, powerful applications that come through, which would then mean having more people go to the ballot. And so just flagging that for next year, I don't know if there's more conversation that needs to happen now, but just to name that for when the budget comes up again later. But yeah, just wanting to, if anyone has any questions for any of the, for this proposed, package of grants, I can answer any questions. I think that's what I'm supposed to do here, right?
Are there any questions from council? Councillor Brown.
Thank you for this. I appreciate your recommendations too for what to do in the future to improve this. And I really appreciate the notes about all the different applicants. And I'm wondering if there are any in here where you, or if it's part of your process to take into consideration support that the city may already be providing in other ways, and how you factor that in. And I saw that was mentioned in the feast application. And I wondered if it was considered in other places like Lost Nation, for instance, where we provided significant support. And there may be others that I don't know about.
Yeah, it is a question on the application.
Okay.
That we ask for in-kind and a direct financial contribution. And I this is not my computer, I have my notes, my personal notes in front of me, so apologies. But I do know that those two particular come up for quite a bit of discussion because of exactly what you're naming, of the in-kind donation versus the dollar donation. And I believe, and this is where I'm like, fact check me on this, but I believe that there is the grants are available for groups that receive in-kind contributions, but not financial contributions from the city.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything that council could do to make your work better, easier?
Great question. Yeah, I think I'm just flagging for future, noting the cap on funds has been restricted the past couple of years. And I think just wanting to also use this as an opportunity if anyone's like listening or interested in applying to be part of the committee, definitely having representative board to be able to make sure we're recognizing the needs of the community. But that's not really I'm wildly washing around trying to answer your question here. Sorry.
Do you have vacancies now?
No. Nope. Thank you. Nope.
Thanks.
Not. There you go.
Councilor Alfano.
I'm grateful for the work that you do. I mean, it's a thankless job. There's so much detail. I don't know how many meetings you go through to come up with the list, but I'm glad you're doing it so that, we don't have to. But I wonder with the increase in the number of applicants, what has it been like in past years? I mean, a significant percentage don't get either the full amount or any funding, yet don't show up on the ballot. Do you anticipate that would be different going ahead, given that you had such an increase in requests?
Yeah, I think we definitely have some leeway from our charge for how to be able to spend those funds. But historically, I've been on the committee for a half dozen years now, I think. And I think we've really been trying to give funds to as many people as apply as we can. Like having some significant amount of funds, because we also recognize that like $100, the administrative burden of filling that out doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
But that give folks some amount, and because of not getting very much, we have seen some applicants not reapply after receiving a pretty nominal amount. I think we. Sorry, I think we've seen like 1 or 2 significant grants go on the ballot due to kind of like this not enforced by the committee or by the charge or anything, but having this kind of a cap of sorts to the amount that we're giving out. But yeah. Okay, good. Fine.
Well, just to follow, I didn't get a chance to look at the application, but I noticed there were a couple of folks who were denied because their application was incomplete. Or how does that happen? Is that something that could the application be improved? Is it just do they run out of time? Does someone drop the ball on their side?
Yeah, I think it's different every year. We have all of the above, and we try to go back to all the applicants before we have the meeting to be able to let them know, hey, you didn't submit your budget. Hey, we didn't get a report from you from your last grant. But
all right, so you're doing your homework.
We try to. Yeah. So it's perfect. So,
yeah. Great. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all.
I think Councilor Sheridan, you're on the liaison to this council, right? Do you have anything to add or anything we might want to know or consider?
I'm not the liaison. I'm actually a citizen member.
Oh, would you like to add anything as a citizen member?
Yeah, sure. I probably served on 30 committees in my time, and I have never served on a committee like this that achieved at the end, after negotiations and everybody compromised, 100% togetherness on everything we awarded. We were 100% in lockstep, all 5 of us. And I would like to give a special shout out to Shayna and Dan, who are the veterans of this group. The other three of us were brand new, and they did a great job of shepherding us through, coaching us, telling us what it was all about. They were tremendous. So Shayna, thank you. Thank Dan too. And I really enjoyed working with this committee. Great people, and I would advise the council not to change anything. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Just thank you, Councilor Sheridan. That was terrific input. And thank you very much for your work. With that, if there are no further questions, is there a motion to accept these recommendations and approve this as presented?
Yeah, I move to approve the community fund board's recommended grants for FY27.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilor Gill, thank you so much. Is there any debate or discussion on this topic? Not seeing anyone. All in favor of, how did you word it just now? Sorry.
It's on the cover sheet. To approve the community fund board's recommended cover sheet.
Okay, so the motion is to, I'm sorry, I still didn't get it. John, can you help me? Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. The motion is to approve the Community Fund Board's recommendation for grants for fiscal year 27. I see right there in italics. Thank you. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously.
I will abstain.
Oh, you will abstain. Okay. We have one abstention. So that's 5-0. It passes. Thank you so much for your leadership on this. Thank you, Councilor Sheridan, for your participation on that. And with that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We will be back at, let's call it 12 minutes. We'll be back at 9 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 9 o'clock on May 27th, 2026. We are returning from break for this meeting of the Montpelier City Council. We are on agenda item number 13, the clerk's records digitizing. This is asking for a vote. And to tee up talking about this, I think, Mr. Odom, would you like to talk to us about this?
How excited is this? I get to talk about something about my job that's not elections. Never, ever happens. Yeah, so this is hopefully pretty short and sweet and non-controversial. We've got a fund.
I'm sorry, hold on one second. Councilors Sheridan and Doyle, do we have both of you with us? Thank you, just checking in. Sorry, I didn't interrupt. Go ahead.
No worries. So there's a fund that's created from the fees we take in when folks record land records that feeds into a standalone fund for restoration and protection of old records we have in the city, be they land records or vital records or city council records or whatever. That fund right now at the beginning of the year was just a little shy of 90,000, I think. It had been building up for a while. And I've started trying to use it since it's never going to get me to enough to buy a new vault. That's just going to be a whole other issue. So I have that money I need to put to some good uses. I created some additional secure storage space, which was very helpful. But I've got a project now where our current vendor has a sort of auxiliary additional feature or service they allow. Our current vendor maintains our land records for public use, both in the office and outside the office, can come in and scan more of our land records and digitize them for use, again, in the office, but also outside the office. What I'm requesting would be authorization to spend $30,000 from this standalone fund. So it's not the general fund, this fund that's been building up for use for just this kind of thing. But it's a significant enough expenditure that I need to come to you guys. But it would allow me to run those records back through, right now they go back through 93. This would take them back through 84. We get them all digitized. We get them all set up into the management system. And that's going to enable title researchers and such to go back more than 40 years from their own offices without having to come in. And that'll just increase the utility of it. It'll continue to decrease the traffic in the office. And it protects those records. I mean, honestly, I'd like to go back farther, and I may come back to you with a request to do that. It's hard for me to pull the trigger on spending for what for me is an enormous amount of money. But we've got some records that are, a little more old land records that are in a little more difficult shape to read that I would love to digitize and clean up as well. But that's for another day. For today, yeah, I'm just looking for approval to dip into that fund. Clean things up, get some backup, get folks using it more. Maybe slow down things to the office a little.
Any clarifying questions from council? Councilor Alfano.
So it sounds like the company comes to us. We don't send records to them.
They're going to come to us. Yeah, they're going to bring their whole little operation down with their scan.
And then what do we do with the actual physical records after they're digitized?
Oh, they stay in the vault.
They stay in the vault.
Yeah.
So we have a backup copy.
Yeah, and it's really important because we lost some of the original land records in the flood. I lost quite a few actually, but they were all already digitized. Yeah. So we have that backup. So none of these aren't stored downstairs, so I don't expect that's going to happen again unless the dam bursts or something. But it's still just good to have more and more of that as much as possible backed up.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, not to gloss over your topic, but is there a motion to approve this? Anyone other than Councilor Alfano or Councilor Cohn has made one?
Don't leave me hanging.
Yeah.
Don't let me down.
I will move to authorize the clerk to spend $28,500 from the Preservation and Restoration Fund to digitize all land records from 1992 to 1984.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Cohn. Is there any discussion or debate on this topic? Seeing none, all in favor of authorizing the clerk to spend $28,500 from the Preservation and Restoration Fund to digitize all land records from 1992 to 1984, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Any abstain? Passes unanimously. Thank you for your work, Mr. Odom. All right, we're moving on to item number 14. It is currently 9:06. The city manager's performance. To tee this up, we could look to perhaps Councilor Gill or Manager Curry or Councilor Cohn or I, for that matter, but.
I'm going to defer to you all. Okay.
All right, Adrian, you're up.
I'll start. Okay. So we presented this. I did a presentation last meeting, so everyone was there. Okay.
Ben wasn't, but
Yeah,
I'm sure he's caught up.
I'm sure you watched the video, and so we promised to present to you all to approve. So we're asking for council to approve this. The city manager's performance evaluation plan. This is, I think we're looking for any feedback, comment, or to approve it as is. I don't think we need to go through the entire thing. I hope everyone read it, but if you have questions, concerns.
Councilor Brown, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for this. You put a ton of work into it. I really, really appreciate it. I have a couple of sort of questions. My overarching question is, I am hoping that Kelly is okay with everything that's in here. And if not, but you all worked on it together, right? Okay. And so then more specific question is in one of the, and my computer's having trouble, so I don't have it in front of me, but there was one of the performance measures or something that you had about housing. And yeah, there we go. So there's a performance metric of 4 to 5 partnerships formed with developers and nonprofits to build new homes in the first year. And that sounds very pie in the sky to me. So wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you're thinking about that, and, you know, is that realistic? How might that happen? And then my second one, and then I'll stop, is under the infrastructure section, there are a lot of specifics that I just want to make sure that DPW and, you know, the city in general, that the staff and the departments have the resources they need to do this, because you can be as great at managing as anyone ever has been in the history of managing. And if there's not enough money to pay for the, you know, paving or whatever, it's not going to happen. So those are the two things I wanted to check on.
These are coming from the KIP, our departments prepared for our strategic plan.
Great.
So this is their recommendation. This is what they told us. They will do it with the resources they have.
Councillor Alfano.
Well, I greatly appreciate the work that the committee did, and I like the document. I mean, I think it can work. But I think it needs to be tightened up. And what I was hoping for was a copy of the document that we could all look at and send comments back to the committee. I mean, some of the language just needs to be tightened up. I think there's definitions there, you know, the criteria for the economic development of business, you know, X number of businesses expanding or retaining. Well, I think it was one expansion or retention. Well, if one business is back next year, how is that defined? You know, I don't know what an expansion is. I don't know what a retention is. I'm sure that the 2,750 miles of water pipe is a typo. I just think it needs to be tightened up a little bit. And so I would appreciate another meeting cycle to look at it, send niggling feedback like that to the committee, and maybe there's a larger issue. I didn't find one, and then have you guys bring it back together, and then we can approve it. Otherwise, I think we'll be here, you know, pounding away at language, and I don't think we want to do that.
So the suggestion was that we postpone the decision on adopting this thing for another meeting cycle, the June 10th, presumably. And then I saw everybody nodding their heads. Councillor Doyle, do you have a comment about that?
Yeah, I think in general, that's a good idea. I mean, first I would just say, like, I also appreciate the work that went into this, and I feel really good that we're building structure around it. I think there are, you know, things about the performance indicators that we should provide comment on. One kind of overarching thing, though, that I wondered about, and I don't know if somebody on the committee could speak to it, is, you know, there's all these kind of performance indicators, but what would happen if there was, you know, frankly, like a catastrophic event in our city, or the city manager really needed to pivot her attention to something else? You know, it would seem to me that a lot of those indicators could go out the window when we've really got to focus on the unforeseen thing. And so I feel like there needs to be a little bit more wiggle room here for qualitative assessment, to just recognizes the reality of what can happen in a municipality. Like, there are reasons why goals won't be met, and we need to be able to account for that and still recognize excellent performance when we see it.
Sure. If I could speak to that a little bit, at one point, I think 100% of the measures were on these sort of KPIs, and now it's 50%, and then the other 50% is more geared towards what you're talking about, just sort of qualitative leadership, and, you know, the things that are slightly more subjective and not purely driven by this number or that number. Also, I think this is a guide for council to be able to evaluate performance and award a merit-based increase or whatever, what have you. So it feels more like a framework rather than a box you must make all decisions and conversations within. Obviously, if there were a flood this summer, yeah, I don't think we would say like, well, you didn't pave enough roads, right? Because we were underwater for 2 months. I mean, that seems ridiculous. At the end of the day, I mean, this is something so that we all have common expectations
And then we're going to evaluate performance when the time comes. Councillor Gill?
And I'll just say that in the evaluation timeline, we do have stop gates, so 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 12 months. So we'll know, right? We'll know if there's a catastrophic event, you know, in 6 months, 9 months, and then this is an iterative process. So this is, as you know, Mark said, it's a guided framework. But when you have any type of review process, you have those stop gates built in so that you can adjust and make any changes as needed at that time. So that is in there, it's a section called evaluation structure. And so I just wanted to point that out as part of this process and that timeline. So you can make adjustments. Not you have this today and then in 12 months we dust this off and, you know, evaluate.
Councillor Sheridan.
Yeah, I think that, you know, to expect to 75 homes to be built in the first year when we've had like what, 8 maybe at best. I think that's an unrealistic expectation, and I would be fine if that was taken out. I did see that we had enough pipeline to almost go to California, like Sal said. So I thought, gee, I don't think we need to do a pipeline to California, but I don't know where that figure came from. But so those were the two things that stood out to me. I wouldn't put a lot of weight on if 75 houses weren't built in the first year, because I just think that's unrealistic. Thank you.
We also had some discussion. I brought up that Manager Curry's not building homes, so she doesn't actually have control over how many homes get built. You can't necessarily control the outcome. You can control the efforts towards that outcome. And in any case, though, it sounds like there is general support for the document, for the process, the concept, and also for the idea of taking a couple of weeks to get some feedback from folks, tighten up the document, and bring it back next time. All right, so with that, with no objection, we're going to move on to the next item. Councillor Gill.
How do we want to accept that feedback? What's that process? Do you all want to send them to me?
Yes.
Okay. Send them to me.
And I would think within a week or so to give time to prepare it for the package.
Okay. Yeah, so in the next, oh my God. Okay, the next week, I might need a backup just because I'm going to be out of town. Yeah. So Palin. So maybe me and Palin, and then I'll work with you to make those edits, and then we'll have it ready for the packet for discussion on June 10th. Good? Okay.
Great. Excellent. All right, done. We're moving on to item number 15, which is really just a discussion item. It's 9:16, the summer schedule check-in. I think this is the point of this, so that we're not scheduling major things when 3 counselors are out on vacation at the same time or something like that, right? So Manager Curry, do you want to take it away?
Yes, and yes, I wanted to check in with you all, so we can, make sure that we're preparing for these meetings in alignment with your availability and expectations. I probably should have included the next 10 agenda in here as well, but I can run through that. So just as a reminder, I am moving my belongings and family out from Colorado in the next 2 weeks. So I will not be here for the June 10th meeting. Evelyn is going to run that meeting, and the items that we have on it are several consent items for purchases relative to, pull it up. Let's see, the Lower State Street trenchless contract, which you all heard about from DPW. The Elm Street water line bid award. There's some stipends, I think, having to do at the wastewater recovery facility. Some expenditures for tree guards and grates. DPW's fleet order for the forthcoming fiscal year, because those take a while to get delivered. And then also, we will be bringing forward, and I still need to organize with them, but you may have seen in the news that Green Mountain Transit is becoming Tri-Valley Transit. So we have a lease with them at the transit center, and Tri-Valley Transit will be assuming the lease that Green Mountain has for the remaining duration, which is through mid-December this year. And then we will be renegotiating a new lease with Tri-Valley Transit. That can be a consent item unless you all would like to hear from Tri-Valley Transit. We can bring them to present to you all about what that looks like with them taking over operations and management. So I'll look to you for interest in that, or if you just want to see that as a consent item.
I'd like to hear from them, frankly, because I think transportation, particularly with the development that we're anticipating, is going to be an important issue. So I'd like to hear what that plan.
Yeah. Extend that. And then Mark had requested that counselors come and with committee updates. It would be a good meeting on the 10th for you all to report out in the committees that you are liaisons to at that time. And then we'll keep the homelessness update on there. And I've asked Matt Jalasek, who supports that committee, to provide that update for that meeting. And then also Montpelier Alive will come and give their annual update to you on the 10th as well. For the 27th, I included kind of the proposed items in your packet that we proposed to discuss about. The other meetings, if we kept to a regular meeting schedule, would be July 8th, July 22nd, August 12th, and August 26th. And so I wanted to check in with you all to see if it makes sense to continue planning for those 2 meetings a month. We're happy to, but wanted to check in with you all. Sounds good. You'll be here. Okay.
Yep.
All right, easy enough. Well, we'll be here then.
Great. What dates are you out of town?
I leave Friday night and I come back late afternoon, evening, June 10th.
You leave this Friday and then come back June 10th. Okay.
And I'll send a note out because I'll have some directions about acting city manager and emergency management and all that kind of stuff.
Terrific.
Before I go, and yeah, and so I'll be back in town the 11th and 12th, but we're moving belongings out of a moving truck into my house.
Great. All right. Anything else on this topic? All right. It is 9:21. We're moving on to item number 16, other business. This is like general business at the beginning. Any member of the public may speak on any topic for up to 5 minutes. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak? Mr. Whitaker.
Steve Whitaker, the city manager's evaluation review, at least outline, might be a good place to. The North Branch Knoll, the barricades were installed without city council authorization on the stated grounds of an electrical hazard. We spent money on false signs to say there's an electrical hazard, and barricades and cables and padlocks, all without council authorization. There was no electrical hazard on that site. What there is now, thanks to the barricades, is an impediment to the emergency safety disconnect switch, now inaccessible to the public and to first responders. The city created the hazard it claims to be preventing. Those barricades remain, despite having been made aware that it's unconstitutional prohibition on assembly on public land. And y'all are ignoring it. You don't even want to discuss it or put it on the agenda, and that's atrocious. The new city manager's done nothing to remove them. This isn't a small matter. It's the same pattern of administrative action without statutory authority that this council has not resolved in the encampment policy context. At this point, it appears to be a management style, not an isolated incident. Country Club Road, someone authorized soil disturbances, massive soil disturbances, a 50 by 70 foot greenhouse installation. Whereas I just got a records request response that there is no authority documents, no documents authorizing the Parks and Trees Department to be doing anything at Country Club Road. It's not a park. And yet they're installing a greenhouse, which is going to disrupt. They claim to have permission from the Department of Environmental Conservation, but the person there who sent an email granting that does not have a written granted authority from the commissioner to grant that permission. But what's worse is that it will totally disrupt the brownfield delineation process that the work plan isn't written for yet, but it is a prerequisite before anybody ever gets a permit to build anything up there. The brownfield delineation has to be delineating a base on known soils. If you disrupt a major chunk of it, you've totally scattered the values that need to be measured. So y'all need to talk about that and instruct the city manager to stop Alec in his tracks. You are not to disturb any more soil up there. He was up there last November with an excavator moving swales around. That's totally prohibited behavior under the brownfield rule. And yet it's been brought to your attention again and again, and it gets ignored. So that's an example of why people don't do business here, is because y'all don't govern properly. The DEC's I rule requires written permission from the commissioner before any soil disturbance on an enrolled brownfield. Permission that requires prior determination of the applicable remediation standard, a decision this city has not made in 4 years of ownership. Moving soil on an uncharacterized site with documented exceedances of mercury, lead, arsenic, and heptachlor epoxide, a neurotoxin to children, before the supplemental site investigation is complete, destroys the baseline data that the investigation depends on. You cannot map contamination you already disturbed. No one on the council is asking who authorized this, whether DEC approval was obtained by anyone authorized to give it. Tonight's contracts, you approved $177,000 in contracts expenditures routed through the Foundation for Resilient Montpelier, an organization incorporated just last February. No Form 990 on file, no public financial disclosures of any kind, no open meeting obligations, no executive director whose compensation has been publicly disclosed. The stated justification is that the planning department lacks capacity. The city plan designated the city manager to be the one required to find places for people to camp and to find public facilities for hygiene. That's what a planning department is for. That's what the city plan was for. And y'all adopted and approved a city plan lacking those statutory required elements, and now saddling that work on an already an underexperienced city manager. So this is how serious you take infrastructure for the unhoused. This is the same planning department who can't fulfill the statutory obligations for homeless facilities, complete a master plan for the city's largest site, can't administer the River's Edge grant, but he can find capacity to travel to Detroit, accept the planning award for the city plan, now under review by the Vermont Supreme Court.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Whitaker.
Sure you.
Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak? All right, seeing no one, we're going to close other business. We're going to move on to item number 17, City Council reports. It's 9:26. I would like to, before we go into this, often when we get to this part of the night, it's super late and everybody's super tired. I do think that this is a great opportunity, just generally speaking. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot tonight, for us to bring back reports of, well, these are the committee meetings that I attended, during this meeting cycle, and these are the highlights from those things, just to keep all of us informed. That would be a good use of this time generally going forward, if that's something we can muster. Let's start with the farthest away person, Councilor Doyle. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I just want to acknowledge, Kelly, like, moving your family out here is a big deal. Buying a home in the city of Montpelier is a big deal. And I just want to, as we talk about the performance review and all of that kind of thing, I just want to let you know that I hear nothing but glowing reports. And like every time that we interact on things with the city, I feel a lot of confidence that this council made the right decision in hiring you. And I'm just really grateful for your leadership. I think you're doing a hell of a job.
Great. Thank you. Counselor Sheridan, you are next farthest away.
Three things. First of all, I was given the honor and privilege of being invited to speak at the War Memorial on Veterans Day, which obviously because of the weather was moved inside. So I spoke at the VFW, and John, the city clerk, was there who did the Pledge of Allegiance. So we were the two that represented the city. And then I sat down and, had a little bit to eat with them all and talked to them. And it was supposed to go from the memorial to the American Legion. So I went over there too and talked to all of them. And so did my, represented the city at both of those events. One thing that I'd like to ask about, why is this happening? And I've had two people say this to me, and I even experienced it myself. Why is nobody answering the city manager's phone line? I called the other day, left a message, couldn't get through. I've had two people say to me they tried and tried, nobody answers. So I'm just kind of wondering, why are we not answering that phone line? So that's the second thing. The third thing is, and yeah, I broke protocol on this one. And you know what? I actually saved the city some money and some time. Sometimes people who live in the neighborhood where something's happening know more about it than Public Works or anybody else, because you see it every day. I had asked last meeting to about a sidewalk up my way to have, to be added to the list to be repaired. And I heard some commotion outside. So I went outside and there was a whole crew of city people. And I said, so what's the plan? And they said, well, we don't really like it. We're going to try to level this off. And I said, level it off? It's all humped up. I mean, we're going to have like a skyline walk here. And it's going to leave a pit right in front of my neighbor's house. That is where her business is located and the people come in. And I said, I don't think that's going to work very good at all. And I said, look down this sidewalk. Tell me if a wheelchair was coming up this sidewalk, what would happen? Every one of them said the same thing. There were like 5 of them. It would tip over and throw the person in the street. So I said, don't you think we should dig it up and do it right? And they said, well, that's not what we were told. So I just said, don't do anything. I'm going to go make a call. So I called Zach, and I want to say thank you to Zach. He came up. He looked at it and he said, I had no clue that this was this bad. He said, this is probably the worst stretch of sidewalk in the city. And I said, yeah, I watch everybody walk in the road all the time, and the national light traffic's coming up and going by. So I told them not to do what they were going to do, because it's just going to, it wasn't going to work. And he agreed. He said, no, it wasn't going to work. And so, sometimes if you don't go by policy, procedure, you don't need to be an engineer to make some decisions. You just need some common sense. And he totally agreed with me and was glad that I called him up, and we're going to dig it up and do it right. And while he was there, I took him around the neighborhood and showed him a bunch of things. So it's all marked up around the neighborhood, and everybody's really happy in the neighborhood. So I just want to say procedure and protocol is nice sometimes, but it only works if the people behind it are a well-oiled machine, and sometimes that isn't the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sheridan, and thank you for representing the city with the VFW. Manager Curry, did you want to respond to?
Yeah, Jim, we were having issues with the phone tree, and my calls were all going to Tanya. And so they were not making it to my inbox, but I think that is resolved and I've cleared up messages that went all the way back to November. So I think I'm caught up and hopefully that won't happen anymore. And I generally try to get back to people between 24 and 48 hours over the weekend.
Well, thank you for getting that faucet item fixed at the senior center. We had somebody that wants to do the plants there who lives there and she wants to water it and there was no faucet working. So thank you for getting that fixed. This is a person that's beautifying in front of our building. She needs water. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Let's go to Councilor Gill.
Sure, just a quick update. So I want to thank Kelly and Arnie for helping set up a pool cleanup day. So our city pool is 90 years old this year. And so it needs some work. It needs some love. And I think, you know, one of the things we'll have to think about in our strategic planning is the next 10 years for our pool as it hits 100 years old. As we've heard through the news, lots of pools in our state and even our region are closing because they're just so expensive. They're old, the infrastructure is falling apart. And it'd be really sad if our pool closed because it's such a community asset. If you ever go there in the summer, it's pretty full. It's a beautiful pool. So we have I think 9 people, but they're family. So it'll probably be like a total of 20 people coming to help clean up the pool over the next week. I think this Saturday, is it the 30th? Yeah, this Saturday we'll have the most amount of folks doing some of the tasks. We're painting the bathroom, the locker room areas, window washing, sweeping and cleaning the locker rooms, removing weeds and grass around the playground equipment and general cleaning and prep. So volunteers in our community are stepping up to help out, support our rec department and beautifying our pool to make it look welcoming and just, you know, just another pool season here in Montpelier. I think it's the greatest time of year and it's just a great asset for our city. So thank you, everyone who signed up. Thank you, Kelly, for pushing that along and for Arnie for working with our volunteers. And I can't wait to go to opening day.
Thank you for your leadership on pushing that along. I'll see you Saturday. Oh.
I'm not going to be at any cleanup. I'm going to be away. I was like, I organized it.
That's
like,
real leadership right there.
He gave all
Tom
the
Sawyer.
days.
Tom Sawyer.
I know. I feel so bad. I said, anyway, I will do something else. Well, I'm here. Whatever.
You don't buy a pool membership. We're going to live there all summer long. Councilor Brown.
I don't have any.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Alfano. No report. And Councilor Cohn.
I am planning to have a tour at cemetery because I saw our cemetery director message. So he was inviting people to come and see what's going on there. So I don't want to jinx anything. I don't want to have a place there yet. But if anyone is interested, I haven't decided. So if anyone is interested, just like email me. We can set up a day and time. Then I can reach out to Patrick. Because I remember my kids when they were at the middle school, they had a cemetery day trip. And it was like, I was, oh my God, how they will be affected, like what will happen. And they said, oh mom, just so cool, you should have seen. So it has been for a while for me just to visit there. So again, if any of you interested in doing this with me, just email me, then we can decide for a day and time.
Thank you, Councilor Cohn. Thank you, everybody, for your reports. If there is nothing else, it's 9:36. We're going to go on to the city clerk's report. Mr. Odom.
Sure. The only thing I would mention is that tomorrow at 5 is the filing deadline for the August primary, statewide primary. So get in your signatures and such if you haven't already, if you intend to. You know, I'm also just going to mention, I just got back from Ukraine. I was in Lviv and Kyiv, and about 24 hours before I got there, they had just had the biggest barrage of drone and missile attacks they'd had since the war began. And since I've been gone, they've had an even worse one. the damage has been more significant than it has been up to this point. And I just mentioned that, you know, I don't know how people feel about our involvement or lack of involvement in that conflict, but just to keep those folks in your minds and your hearts. They're going through a lot right now, and it's tough to see.
Thank you for that. Manager Curry.
Okay, I do have a number of things I'd like to update on related to our FEMA rebuild. We'll be issuing an RFP shortly for services in supporting our grant management of that. The FEMA grants are pretty complex and technical, and we can use that as an eligible expense for that. To follow in the coming weeks will also be an RFP for design services. And so that's exciting. That will be recruiting for architectural firms to help us to design that campus we built. Relating to the East State Street project and the survey discrepancies that you heard earlier, we are still seeking legal advice. I met with our lawyer who's been our land and title records lawyer throughout all this. He no longer does litigation, and so we are now engaged with a litigation attorney, which will give us different strategies to consider whether or not, whether or not we file the survey as is or consider other options. And so still collecting information and recommendations on that. Let's see, on June 8th, I wanted to let you all know, and I'll follow up in writing so you have it too. The Planning Commission and the Housing Committee are having a joint meeting to hear a presentation from CVRPC on the updated regional land use maps. So this is where the identification of like properties that would be eligible for tier 1 status, go through that process of adoption. And so we wanted to extend that invitation for you all to listen into that meeting, to hear that presentation. The CVRPC has to do 23 of these, and so they won't be coming back to council with a specific presentation since you have been had heard these multiple times throughout the whole process. Staff will report out probably on June 27th on those updates as well, but I wanted to let you know if you wanted to listen into that conversation. We're still working through the union contracts. We have provided another proposal, so we're kind of continuing rounds of negotiation, which I hope will come to a conclusion. Mr. Whitaker mentioned in his comments, the judge ruled today against the request for an injunction, which was a request to essentially stop movement forward on the country club process because of open meeting law violation claims that are the subject of the lawsuit. That was denied, along with some of the other claims that had been included. And so that continues to proceed favorably to the city. Related to obviously the big topic of now focus is the recruitment process for the police chief. The chief and deputy chief have agreed to a longer transition off. They will be working through the summer. We haven't identified specific dates for separation of service yet at this point, but it's likely the deputy will end kind of mid to end July and the chief will end mid to end August. I am considering recruitment services, which could help provide an assessment internally of the department and develop a job profile for recruiting that hire. And so I've begun, some exploratory conversations about that. I also would like to foreshadow, I would like to conduct some listening sessions, which will involve, with staff internally and also externally with the community, and want to get those scheduled pretty expeditiously to get, feedback on a profile the next police chief for the city of Montpelier. And so there will be lots of attention and movement, and much has started already. I wanted to do all that. Progress report. And I think that's it for now. Happy to answer any questions of anything else that came up as well.
Any questions for the manager before we move on? Councilor Gill.
Did you end up posting the position for the
of the assistant city manager. We are finalizing it. It will go up by Friday. Oh, yeah.
That's great.
Looking forward to that.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. Any other questions? All right, oh, look, mayor's report. Okay, that's me. I'll just add that all the work that you're doing, which, you know, being new is a thing, the job itself is a big thing. And, you know, with all of the extra attention because of the situation around the unhoused population and the adjacent populations, whether they be unhoused or not, is big enough. And you're doing it without an assistant or an administrative assistant. So I can't wait to see what you're going to do after you get those positions filled and you've got some help. So,
Look forward to that day as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, my children will be arriving, so I will have to be in the office fewer hours, working home more hours in the evening.
Just a few things that I'll be doing. I don't know if these even count as doing as mayor, but well, 9 o'clock on Friday, we'll be doing the flag raising where we will raise the pride flag. So if anybody would like to join, I'll be there. And then at 10 o'clock on Friday, I'll be helping Montpelier Alive. The flowers are coming in. So we'll be hanging flower baskets and doing some additional plantings. I think they're also welcoming volunteers if anybody wants to be part of that. Hopefully the weather will be nice. It'll be nice to be outdoors for a morning. I'm going to go really slow because it's not even 10. I think we have to stay till 11. So it's going to be raining. Thanks, Sal. I really appreciate that. But good for the flowers. It's great for the flowers. I'll wear a raincoat. Yeah, to go plant flowers in the middle of the morning. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, I'll pass that on to Katie and the folks at Montpelier Alive. And we'll send photos. Sure. And then, are there other pool cleaning dates that you need more volunteers for? I'll be there on Saturday morning for a brief time, but
a bunch of folks come throughout the week. You know, people came like an hour at a time. And then Saturday, I think between 9 and 1, there should be, you know, a good 10 people. So I guess we'll just touch base with Arnie after Saturday to see if he needs additional help. Because I think next week he offered a couple dates, but they're between like 9 and 3, which is most people can't
on work days.
do 9 to 3 is why we offered this Saturday from 9 to 1. But let's just see how much people get done this weekend, and then we'll see. Maybe we can, if we need to, maybe we'll add another Saturday. Or do that.
Okay.
I don't
know. I'm also going to resume my 8 a.m. Friday listening sessions at Cafe Noah, not tomorrow or not this week, but next week. I really miss those. I'm also finding time management to be really difficult. So just having a spot there where people say, can we have coffee? I can say, sure, Fridays at 8. That'll be really helpful. I'd also just like to reiterate what I was saying about if you have the opportunity and you need some lunch, there are these community meals that are happening at Trinity Monday through Thursday and at St. Augustine on Fridays. Really sitting down and talking to people brings things a lot closer. It's harder to be suspicious and hateful of people really up close. And all of these things are sort of examples of one of the things that I'm finding challenging in the mayor role. This is new for me, is that I've always been somebody who really likes to just do stuff, like hang flowers and, you know, paint and do stuff. And I'm finding that that is not necessarily the best use of this role's time. And so one of the things that I'm trying to learn, and I hope that we as a council and as staff and as a whole community can, over the long term, improve upon, is a sort of disciplined communications kind of scheme, because not everybody is a doer or an enforcer or an actor of of work and policy. And so I think whether that means we want to listen to everyone, but whether that means directing certain folks to say, oh, that's a really great thing to bring to such and such a committee, or to bring to the city manager's office. And for us having a sense of what the ideal communications flow is and being part of trying to shepherd those communications. And sometimes it's going to be, oh, go talk to your district counselor. Sometimes it's going to be staff or whatever. I don't know what that ideal looks like now, but I do think that that's something that should be a goal of ours going forward. Just a thought. And with that, does anyone have anything else to add before we move on to agenda item number 21, everybody's favorite? With that, it is 9:48 on May 27th, right? Yeah, 2026. This meeting of Montpelier City Council is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.